Good morning, it's 7 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
Sophie and Wilf, good morning from me as well. Lots to update you on when it comes to Iran.
As the US sinks 6 small boats in the Strait of Hormuz, Iran warns there's no military solution to the crisis and says Trump's Project Freedom is more like Project Deadlock.
Keir Starmer says attacks against British Jews are a crisis for all of us and calls in leaders from across public life to come up with a coordinated response.
The World Health Organization identifies 7 cases of Hanta virus as 3 people die on board a cruise ship in the South Atlantic.
Also today, we're talking to the journalist, magazine editor, broadcaster and author Tina Brown about the truth and Donald Trump.
And on the power of political satire, screenwriter, director and double Olivier Award winner Mark Gatiss will join us to talk about his new play.
Good morning. The ceasefire in the Middle East is over, with reports of multiple strikes on ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran claims to have struck an American warship. The US says it's destroyed 7 of Iran's so-called fast boats.
Well, tensions have escalated since Donald Trump launched what he called Project Freedom, an operation for the US military to guide commercial ships out of the strait. President Trump said Iran would be blown off the face of the earth if it attacked US ships, while Iran said there was no military solution to the crisis.
Well, here in the UK, Keir Starmer's condemned Iranian strikes on the United Arab Emirates, saying the UK stands in solidarity with the UAE. Now, this is after an Iranian strike caused a large fire and 3 injuries at one of the key oil ports there. Our correspondent Lisa Holland reports.
The battle for the Strait of Hormuz appears to be underway. Iranian state television showing these pictures and claiming warning shots have been fired at American warships. America released images of its own showcasing its personnel in the Persian Gulf as it claimed to have destroyed 7 Iranian boats and shot down Iranian missiles and drones as it launched what it called Project Freedom to support, not escort, trapped commercial vessels through the vital shipping lane. It says 2 US-flagged ships have now made it through, though Iran disputes this.
They don't have a Navy anymore. Think of it. They had 159 ships. How many do they have left, Kelly? Out of 159, take a guess. She's very smart. 0.
Iran's government continues to insist it will meet the Americans head-on. Its foreign ministry spokesman, when asked why Iran doesn't roll over to its superpower adversary, replied, "We are a superpower too." And on state TV, a warning from the Iranian military.
Maritime movements that do not conform to the declared principles of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Navy will face serious risks, and violating vessels will be stopped with force.
Iran has released a map claiming new control lines of the sea between Iranian territory and the United Arab Emirates. Currently, around 1,000 vessels and 20,000 maritime crew are stuck in the Persian Gulf. With America claiming a South Korean vessel has been hit, the real test is whether it can entice trapped crews through the blockaded strait.
It is quite disturbing, and my crew morale is again, going down. So it is really very upset to know again they are attacking merchant ships. Our prime priority is to keep the vessel safe at the moment and just maintain our position and wait for right opportunity and wait for war to come an end, or wait for the Strait of Hormuz to reopen safely.
But some are optimistic.
Potentially, it could work if you're able to deny the Iranians the situational awareness and you're able to provide a level of assurance and protection to the ships that go through. Then potentially it could work. But we also have to keep in mind that the Iranians have many cards up their sleeve, and they still have the mine threat that they could potentially put into play. And so the situation is potentially very dynamic.
There's no doubt this is a war now in its third month, which has entered a high-stakes and dangerous phase. Lisa Holland, Sky News.
And off the back of the fact that the ceasefire is over, oil prices are elevated. They're actually down about 1% overnight. They're trading at $113 a barrel for Brent crude. But over the last week, significantly elevated. Briefly on Thursday, we hit 118, fell back from that level. But, the key takeaway at $113 a barrel is, we're not just well above 100 now, we're well above 110. And clearly, the ceasefire breaking down is a big part of that.
Now, back here later this morning, we're going to get more on the Prime Minister's response to rising anti-Semitism in the wake of the Golders Green stabbing. So the PM's hosting a group of community leaders in Number 10 to call for what he's describing as a whole-of-society response.
The Prime Minister will meet leaders from business, civil society, health, culture, higher education and policing and ask them to reflect on how they can tackle anti-Semitism in their sector. Well, Ali's here with us. Very good morning, Ali.
Morning.
Great to see you. Even if it's a very, very difficult topic still 3 or 4 days on, what is exactly the scale of what the Prime Minister's trying to do today?
So he's saying this is about bringing together all sectors. So there's going to be a number of cabinet secretaries, the health secretary, the home secretary, the education secretary, and basically they are going to be talking to their sectors. So it's going to be, for example, the National Theatre for Culture, the Sir Mark Rowley, the Commissioner of the Met Police and other policing chiefs, vice-chancellors from a number of universities. So basically this is about finding out how anti-Semitism is happening in a whole range of sectors and what can be done about it. Obviously, it follows a whole range of suspected anti-Semitic attacks, not least the attack in Golders Green, 2 men taken to hospital last week. I was there last week in Golders Green. I was talking to people who were protesting outside where the Prime Minister was. I'm sure you saw that. People were really angry, saying, show your face to the Prime Minister. What they were saying is that they want to see action, not just words. So I think that is going to be the challenge for the Prime Minister now. And obviously, he's talked about the 25 million, that's being spent on policing in Jewish communities. He's talked about fast-tracking anti-terror laws. One of the big questions now is going to be about protests. That is very live debate. The Prime Minister's talked about a crackdown. We know that Kemi Bey, not the Tory leader, and the Chief Rabbi both want to see a moratorium on these pro-Palestinian protests. The Prime Minister's talked about words and chants that are used as well. But obviously, there's a balance there with free speech and how people can make their views known in protesting in a legitimate way, make their views known on what is going on in Gaza. And, people like Lord Dubs, I should say, Labour peer who came here on kinder transport, was saying that he doesn't think banning protests is the right measure that should be taken. So, look, it's obviously nuanced. It's a difficult debate that is going on in government right now. And the Prime Minister, obviously wants to talk about it today.
I've been really struck by what Sir Mark Rowley said recently. It's interesting, I think, that he's at this meeting, because he's given this interview to The Times. He obviously has done press statements as well. And he's really, it feels to me, upped what he's calling for. He's saying that where are the voices? Why aren't there more people speaking out for the Jewish community?
Yeah, he's talked about the need for public condemnation. He's also talked, quite interestingly, about kind of algorithms on social media as well, and how people are being fed information and how that is fueling anti-Semitism. So, yeah, he's being really interesting. Also, obviously, he's had this quite public spat with Zach Polanski, the leader of the Green Party, and it looks like those 2 men are now going to meet. So, it has become political. The Prime Minister is going to be meeting. I should also say the Prime Minister is also convening ministers this afternoon to talk about the impact that's what's happening in the Middle East is having on security here at home, and obviously that is going to take in anti-Semitism as well. So I think, he wants to be seen to be talking about it, doing something today. But as I say, people want action rather than words. So let's see what happens.
Ali, great stuff. Thanks so much for that. By the way, later on in the programme, we're going to be speaking to the media legend Tina Brown about truth-telling and her warning that investigative journalism is under threat. Tina Brown coming up a little bit later on this morning.
We want to bring you an update on this cruise ship, where people are effectively stuck. They aren't able to get off, and there's been this disease outbreak. The World Health Organization identifying 7 confirmed or suspected cases of Hanta virus on this luxury cruise ship currently in the Atlantic.
Well, 3 people on board the MV Hondius have already died, and a British man is in a critical condition. The ship's being held off the coast of Cape Verde in West Africa, with evacuations planned for 150 people on board. Hantavirus is a rare but highly lethal illness spread by rats and mice, transmitted to humans via droppings. Our health correspondent Ashish Joshi has been taking a look at the disease.
A number of passengers on board a cruise ship have died and others have become extremely sick with suspected hantavirus. Here's what you need to know. The cruise ship, the MV Hondius, is carrying about 150 passengers and was travelling between Argentina and Cape Verde when passengers fell ill. The ship is currently outside the port of Praia, the capital of Cape Verde. To protect the local population, passengers are not allowed to disembark here. This passenger says he's on board the ship.
What's happening right now is very real for all of us here. We're not just a story. We're not just headlines. We're people. All we want right now is to feel safe, to have clarity, and to get home.
According to the cruise operator, Oceanwide Expeditions, the first fatality was on the 11th of April, when a Dutch passenger on board the cruise ship died. On the 24th of April, the deceased passenger and his wife were disembarked on St. Helena, an island in the South Atlantic Ocean. But 3 days later, the 27th of April, the cruise operator was told the wife had also died during her return journey. On the 27th of April, a British national became ill and was evacuated to South Africa for emergency care. Then, on the 2nd of May, a German passenger died aboard the ship. Hantavirus is a rodent-borne virus and is part of a family of zoonotic viruses. That's diseases that can be passed from animals to humans.
If you've got mice or rats on a cruise ship, and particularly if the company isn't really vigilant in rodent control and sanitizing surfaces and segregating passengers from any droppings, it can be, very dangerous.
So, how does the virus infect humans? The virus starts off contained in rodent feces, urine or saliva. Infected particles become airborne, and these can be breathed in by humans. Initial symptoms are very similar to flu-like symptoms, including muscle aches, fever, headache, and coughs. These can later develop into a serious infection of the lung or the kidneys, leading to organ failure. The incubation period, that's the time from infection to when the first symptoms appear, is somewhere between 1 to 8 weeks, but usually around 2 to 4 weeks. In extremely rare cases, the disease can be spread from human to human.
Hantavirus is not usually spread like COVID-19 or influenza, although it's a respiratory virus. For most hantaviruses, casual person-to-person spread is almost very rare.
Although there are antivirals that can help to manage symptoms, there is no cure for hantavirus. Viral outbreaks on cruises are not uncommon, but it's rare to have one that is so potentially dangerous. Officials are still working out how and where the passengers became infected and if all of them are sick with hantavirus.
Ashish Joshi there for us. Well, Ollie's joined us around the set, and you've been in touch with someone on board.
Yes, so this was a passenger who disembarked the MV Hondius in St. Helena, along with the widow of the man who died. That widow then went on to die herself. Now, the person who disembarked has told Sky News that she felt she was left in the dark from the cruise's operating company, Oceanwide Expeditions, and that she had to complain to them in order to get more information. Now, Oceanwide Expeditions sent her an email basically saying that there had been this incident on board with the suspected hantavirus and that she should be monitoring her own symptoms to see whether any symptoms materialise over the coming weeks, and if she develops any, to contact the healthcare provider and to inform them of her recent travel. Now, not everybody has been critical of the way that Oceanwide has carried out and responded to this incident. Indeed, some passengers have said that they're doing the best with what they can because, of course, this is pretty novel for hantavirus to appear on a ship like this. And we know that Oceanwide has been speaking to its customers, its passengers on board, telling them to minimise the contacts that they've got with other passengers, keep social distancing, wear face masks where possible, and that they are trying to exert as much pressure as possible through diplomatic means, getting in touch with governments to try to get these passengers off the ship, because they want to try to get the 2 people that have got these severe symptoms off as quickly as possible. There's a 3rd national that they're trying to get off, but clearly it looks like Cape Verde does not want to accept these people, and so they're rushing to try and get the passengers on board who are sick off. There's potential here where they're now going to be setting sail towards the Canary Islands so the rest of the passengers can get off. But at the minute, it's a bit of a standoff. And what we're hearing from the Foreign Office in a statement is that consular teams have been stood up across the UK, South Africa, Spain and Portugal to support British nationals, and we're working around the clock with our international partners, including the cruise ship operator. So, yeah, everybody's trying their best to help these people on board.
Ollie, good stuff. Thanks so much. Really appreciate that. And we're going to be speaking to Dr. Raj Arora later this hour as well about this, and get you more of what you need to know about the particular virus. So, of course, it's in the South Atlantic isolated location.
Yeah, just an astonishing situation, an awful situation with the people just stuck on that ship. We're going to take you to Germany next because 2 people have been killed and 3 seriously injured after a car ploughed into crowds in Germany.
Car drove into a pedestrian zone in the eastern city of Leipzig in what officials believe was a deliberate rampage.
So the victims are a 63-year-old woman and a 77-year-old man. They're both German citizens, and it all took place yesterday afternoon in a very busy shopping area of the city.
The driver, a 33-year-old man with German citizenship, has been arrested on suspicion of murder and attempted murder. The driver's motives remain under investigation.
It's very likely that it was a single and isolated incident. It was a perpetrator, and we assume that Leipzig is absolutely safe and people can use the pedestrian area. A 33-year-old German citizen was arrested, and everything else we're going to talk about once we know the developments.
More on that later on in the programme. Now, it's a craze being promoted online, from influencers to athletes, sold as the cure for weight loss, muscle growth, skin health, you name it. They're called peptides and short amino acids injected into the body. You might have heard of Ozempic and Wegovy, which are approved for use, but many being flogged online, having not been through any medical testing.
Well, here's our US correspondent Martha Kellner, who has been investigating a warning. The report mentions the use of needles.
I think we need to have a pep talk, a peptide pep talk.
Peptides to help them gain muscle, peptides for them to be tanner. This is your sign to hop on a peptide.
The new craze taking America by storm.
I'm sure by this point you've heard about
peptides.
Peptides. Are you on peptides?
That's the collective name for these short-chain amino acids that, when injected, stimulate the body's natural processes synthetically.
After trying nearly every peptide on the market.
Some, like insulin, have been around for decades, but we're talking about a new Wild West of unproven peptides.
The answer is yes.
But right now I'm doing Pinealon, Epitalon, HCG, Retatrutide, very popular on the internet right now, Wolverine blend, which is BPC 157, TB 500, NAD+, hormone therapy, TRT.
It is like a pharmacy in here.
It's a real pharmacy, yeah.
Jacob describes his body as a science experiment. His hypothesis that peptides make you stronger, healthier and better looking. You call that the Wolverine blend?
So if you ever seen the movie in the Wolverine, whenever he gets stabbed, if he gets shot, if he gets whatever, his body just regenerates so fast that he gets healed automatically. So they call it that because it makes your body heal very quickly.
The benefits are debated and the long-term effects on humans largely unknown. Every morning for Jacob starts the same way. A large handful of pills and several injections.
And then our Wolverine. Try to mix up what side you go on.
This is the last one.
One more. Yeah, my NAD.
I'm finding it a little uncomfortable watching you. I'm worried for you. I'm worried for your health.
Well,
just doing like one after the other. And
in general, you know, a lot of people say that. I am healthier because I'm doing it.
Are you concerned, though, about sort of the lack of studies, the fact that no one has tested this potion of drugs over 10 years and decided that that's okay and it's not going to do you long-lasting damage?
Sure, you know, and there's a risk to be associated with everything. You might be right? Maybe I die at 50 because of this. But during that 50 years, I'll have way more fun than anybody else. Or I might live to 200 because I'm doing things like the epitalon.
Our nation's food, fitness.
Many of these peptides are not approved by the US drug regulator known as the FDA. But Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is using his power to try and expand access to them.
Peptides are like supplements. Supplements are not regulated in that way by FDA. Peptides are not supposed to be regulated.
Not only for infections, but just they might inject it wrong.
This biologist believes some non-approved peptides could be very dangerous.
It really doesn't make sense for Kennedy to reverse course, and I don't see any good reasons, like there's no new data or anything like that to justify this. My worry is in 5 or 10 years, we're going to see an outbreak of cancers amongst peptide users. If there's precancerous cells hanging around, if you're giving them a signal to grow more and you're giving them new blood vessels, you could turn a precancerous little blob into a new cancer.
But the warnings are not putting off a growing number of the fitness community who use peptides.
A BPC TB500 for injuries. I was running retrotriptide, which wasn't for me, and then I would run into some more and it hasn't worked.
OK, you're on 4 of them at the moment?
Yeah, but I cycle through them.
OK.
Because I don't like putting things in my body all the time.
Are you concerned about the lack of studies?
If you can go out and go drink alcohol every weekend, why are you concerned about something that could potentially heal your body and make you perform better and healthier?
Not on peptides. I don't know, I think I'm just really young and I'm starting out my fitness career right now. Just doing natural things as I can as I grow.
Many people are turning to these injectables, viewing them as a cheat code, a quick fix for all manner of perceived problems. Peptides are going mainstream fast. Science can't keep up. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Tampa, Florida.
We've been talking, of course, about what the government is doing to try and tackle anti-Semitism. We're joined now by the Housing Secretary, Steve Reeder, who joins us now. But before we get to what the government's doing, I was just keen to get your take on Iran, because we're getting these conflicting reports coming out, but it's pretty clear the ceasefire's over. What are you hearing, and how worried are you about the impact that this is going to have on the economy?
Well, it's hard. It's always hard to know precisely what's going on. I think the Prime Minister was right to keep us out of it. It isn't our war. We're not directly involved other than in protecting British people who may come under attack and British assets in the region. But the Prime Minister is working very closely with international allies, both to de-escalate the situation. He was recently touring the Gulf states, our allies in the Gulf states, to try and make sure that we're bringing them together and making sure that their voices are being heard. And he's been working with other allies, notably the President of France, to look at what we can do to secure the Strait of Hormuz so that the supplies of energy can get through once this dreadful war comes to an end.
You're here today to announce new support to try and tackle anti-Semitism. What is it you're doing?
Well, we've seen an absolutely outrageous increase in anti-Semitism across our society in recent months in particular. I was at the synagogue in my constituency in Streatham just this weekend, and we had a big round table talking to members of the community there about how they feel, and they are frightened. I had one grandparent telling me that his granddaughter is just going to primary school, and his daughter, her mother, was too afraid to write down she was Jewish on the form going ahead into that primary school. Now, that kind of tells you the level of fear that there is in the community at the moment, and we can't accept that. So the Prime Minister is calling together members of the cabinet, like me, leaders from the Jewish community, but importantly, leaders from other faiths right across society, public services, schools, universities, to sit down and focus on what more we can all do to keep the Jewish community safe. The government's playing its part, but this is something the whole of society needs to be calling out.
On that, I've been really struck by what Samut Rowley said over the last week or so, the head of Met Police. He said that he's trying to confront people about the scale of anti-Semitism. Now is the time to ask difficult questions. Why don't we see more condemnation of the attacks we've seen in recent weeks? Where are all the voices against hate? Where is the solidarity with fellow Londoners? Is he right?
I think Sir Mark Rowley has said some really interesting things recently. That's one of them. Another thing that he said, I think it was in his letter to Zach Polanski, the leader of the Green Party, is that legitimate debate about the actions of a foreign country can never be used to target hatred and abuse towards the British Jewish community, and it's really important that is the case. We need the whole of society to call this out. The leaders of other faiths, whether it's Christian, Muslims, all the faiths that we have in this country today, everyone needs to call this out for what it is, and that is racism that is leaving one particular community, our Jewish community, living in anxiety and fear for their safety. We cannot tolerate that.
So Matt Riley also talked about social media algorithms. If your social media feeds are driven in a particular direction, you get more of this material, you end up absorbing and believing it, and that's dangerous. How worried are you about people, I guess, being radicalised by social media?
Well, I think that's absolutely what's happening. People are being pushed towards extremist content very, very quickly. You're only ever 2 or 3 clicks away from imagery that could have come from the Third Reich on social media. If you're a young person growing up and you haven't had proper information about what happened in the Holocaust, all you're seeing is this extremist nonsense, then that starts to warp your thinking, and we can't allow that. So we need to look at how we can work with big tech to tackle online hatred.
Do they need to do more, you think, big tech?
They need to do more, but I think we all need to do more as a society. I mean, government will play its part, but we genuinely need the whole of society to tackle this.
On government playing its part, there's focus on these pro-Palestinian marches, right?
Yeah.
Which many people go on, right?
Yeah.
Because they strongly are appalled by the scenes that they see in Gaza, and they want to try and speak out against it. Kemi Badenoch wants to ban them. Is she right?
Everything in society is about balance. The rights of people to freely express their views, but the rights of other people not to be intimidated and targeted with hatred. Now, the Crime and Policing Bill that's just gone through Parliament gives the Home Secretary new powers to take into account the cumulative effect of a series of marches on intimidation towards a particular community, and she can use those powers.
So just to be clear on that, does that basically mean if there's been a march every single weekend in a particular area, you could say, actually, that's enough, we're just going to stop
That's
that
right.
happening?
That's what the powers would mean. And also some of the language that's used on those marches, globalise the Intifada being, the example that gets talked about the most. Now,
Do you think that just to stay on the banning of marches, because I guess some people would say they have a right to march as many times as they want to if they're doing it in a peaceful manner. But
people have a right to march, but members of the Jewish community have the right to live their lives and go about their business in freedom and to express their religion. Now, Jewish people today are afraid to wear the skull caps, afraid to show the Star of David. In this country, in 2026, that is completely unacceptable. Okay. Jewish people should be as free as a Christian or a Muslim to go around and express their religion freely.
OK, let's talk about the local elections. We can't talk about individual seats, of course, but you've got a lot of experience, I think, in London in particular. Yep. Labour is expected to do pretty badly, particularly in places where they have been strongholds, right? Urban, younger voters turning away from you. How bad is it looking? And what is your message for people who might be looking for change?
You're right. I was the Labour leader in opposition who won back the London Borough of Lambeth 20 years ago, but it was on a night that we did very badly across the country. So I know from personal experience, if you run the right local campaign, you can buck the trend. You talk about the things that matter to voters, they will come out and vote for you. I mean, that also shows me that you can't easily predict what's going to happen in a set of elections.
If it does go as badly as many are expecting, what's your message to people who might be thinking, right, we need to change the leader, we need to do it quickly?
Well, I see these stories in the press as well, but I speak to MPs all the time.
Well, I speak to MPs and councillors as well, and they say, and a lot of them are saying, time's up.
Well, what I'm getting from MPs is they want this psychodrama to stop. They want to focus on what's going to get them re-elected, what's going to get me re-elected is, have we delivered the change we promised at the general election in July 2024? Have we tackled the cost of living? Are we building enough social housing? Are we fixing our broken public services and reducing NHS waiting lists? Well, the answer to all of those is, yes, things are moving in the right direction. Do people feel enough change yet? Probably not. But let's focus on what the British people want. We can't be like the Tories and doom scroll through leaders. It ends in annihilation. We've got to focus on the British public, not ourselves.
You did a quick-fire round with the Times recently, the Times newspaper.
Yes.
You were asked Angela Rayner or Wes Streeting, and you said, I'm having dinner with Angela, so I'll pick her, we're friends.
Yeah, that's right. I had dinner with her on Saturday night.
So what happened at the dinner then?
Huh?
What was it? What did you chat about?
Well, we chatted about normal human being things. We didn't just talk about politics. She's given up vaping, for one thing, so we talked about issues like that. We've been friends for years.
Did you talk about the future of Keir Starmer and whether she's going to run for the leadership?
No, we didn't. We had other people there who are not political, and sometimes even we politicians talk about other things.
Anything in particular, that stood out that she was saying? We talk about change in the Labour Party.
Well, all of us want to see the Labour Party delivering the change that we promised at the election, because that is how we'll win the next election. Now, I took over from Angela in the job that I've got now. She was the Housing Secretary before me, and I think she did a great job. She put in place the Social and Affordable Homes Programme. There's £39 billion to build the biggest increase in social housing that we've seen in this country for a generation. Now, I'm getting on and building on her work and getting those homes built. Last year, we built more council homes than we've built in a generation in this country. So, we're proud of the change that we're leading, but we have to focus on change for the British people, not doom-scrolling through leaders or the psychodrama of Westminster politics.
Would you like to see her back in Cabinet?
I think in time, I think she did a great job. I'm a big fan and friend of Angela. She's really good at communicating and can cut through to voters. She has a role to play.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Steve Reid, speaking to us there about the government's move to try and tackle the challenge of anti-Semitism throughout society. Coming up, we're going to be talking more about those all-important elections that are coming up later this week. Speaking to Patrick English of YouGov, who's been punching through some pretty interesting stats we're going to bring you.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story? I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They will be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Gala Hakim.
Well, it's just 2 days to go until the local elections in England and then, of course, the Scottish and Welsh parliamentary elections as well.
The Labour Party fear it could be a very bad night for them, with Reform and Green hoping to snap up some of their seats.
Now, it's always, I guess, agonising, I would put it, to kind of report on these things from in the studio. You've got to get out and talk to people. So last week I went to Ashton-under-Lyne in Tameside, seat of one Angela Rayner. It should be as red as it gets. But just take a look at how people were feeling ahead of those elections.
Promises have been broken. Nigel will do a good job.
Nigel Farage?
Yeah, he'll do a better job.
We used to not dehumanise each other. Something has changed.
I've got no faith in politicians. None of them, no.
I've always been for the Conservatives, but where things are going now, I certainly wouldn't vote Labour again, and I wouldn't do Reform, so I just don't know.
Disgusted.
Really? Why?
They don't know what they're doing, any of them.
None of them?
No.
None of them?
Waste of time.
Well, we can talk now to Patrick English, Head of Elections and Political Data at YouGov. It's so striking going out and just talking to people like that, because you see all the polls, obviously, where everyone's approval ratings are historically bad, but there's something quite visceral about just hearing it directly from people. How do you think things are going to shake down late this week?
Yeah, it is. The context, I think, of this is very important, right? This is a mid-term election for a deeply unpopular Labour government, so we should expect, as we do in all mid-term elections, for the government to struggle. But I think the scale of some of the defeats that we're looking at potentially for the Labour Party, of course, we don't know until the votes are counted, but the scale of them does look to be quite dramatic. There are some forecasts, others are available, that could see Labour losing up to, let's say, 80% of the councillors they're trying to defend. 4 in every 5 Labour councillors losing their seats potentially on Thursday. Up in Scotland, we're looking at the SNP winning potentially for the 5th time in a row. It was only 18 months ago we were having conversations about Labour potentially taking power there. And in Wales, in the Senedd, potentially a seismic change there. Labour and the Conservatives being swept away as the top 2 parties in Wales by Plaid and Reform. So we're looking really at wholesale changes potentially everywhere, and the SNP continuing their dominance in Scotland, and Labour in particular, although to some extent as well the Conservatives struggling to defend a lot of their seats in these councils in England and Wales.
As you said at the top, we often do expect the government of the day to do bad in what is a mid-term election. How much of it always is to be expected, and how much is this going to be potentially bad enough to be damning for the Prime Minister? Are you kind of reminded of 2019, Theresa May, or any other kind of moments like that?
And there are a lot of parallels to be drawn here, and this is, I think, the new age of British politics, is that we do see these big changes happening from election to election. I remember, of course, in 2019, we were thinking, well, are we looking at 10 years of Boris? And now look where we are. So big changes, I think, are more normal than they were. But the scale of some of these defeats that we're looking at, I think, is probably beyond what we would expect in a normal mid-term situation. And there's a couple of areas I think that we can look at now.
Let's look at London first, shall we? Because this is London, and I mean, this is like safe Labour territory, right? Or it has previously been. What's going on?
Exactly, and this goes to the question: well, some of these changes we're expecting are really out of the box. In London, this patchwork here, this is our projection from a couple of weeks ago of what we thought the London results would look like if the election were happening that day. We see Labour being replaced as the largest party on 6 of these borough councils. The Greens doing particularly well in the central areas, sort of Hackney, Lambeth, Lewisham. Reform taking some in the east. The Liberal Democrats down there in Merton. The Conservatives looking to pick up areas like Barnet, looking very strong in Westminster. And while the Labour decline is underlying all of this, it's not sort of the days of one party benefiting are kind of gone, really. It's this patchwork idea of different parties winning in different areas. This is just London, but we're expecting this to be replicated right across the country when the counts come in.
Yeah, let's bring in the West Midlands, shall we, at this point, or the Midlands, which I think we can have a look at as well. I mean, the one that really strikes you here is Reform. So there's like pale blue dots that you can see on your screens there pushing up towards the kind of halfway point. Is that going to be the story outside London?
Absolutely. So there's 2 sides of this coin. One is that we expect Labour in particular to be falling back heavily, although, as I say, the Conservatives too potentially looking to struggle. But the other side of that coin is Reform really advancing. Reform gain is going to be the strapline that we see throughout Friday, we believe. And in some of these places, they're putting on some hugely impressive results. Look at that, Cannock Chase, Tamworth, Nuneaton and Bedworth. And these crucially include areas, Dudley, for example, where the Conservatives traditionally have been very, very strong. So it's Reform taking seats and taking the momentum, really, away from Labour and away from the Conservatives as well, right up and down the country.
Does national vote share matter as much as seats gained or lost, do you think, in this sort of set of votes?
I think they're both important to look at. Of course, when
What's the swing factor for Labour, do you think?
Well, we'll put it this way. In Birmingham and Sandwell, they could be down by 30 percentage points on the vote share that they achieved. So that'd be around half, potentially over half of the votes that they got in 2022. Now, 2022 is an interesting baseline because, of course, that was Partygate was dominant there. Boris Johnson resigned shortly after that election. So it's kind of a bit of a high watermark for Labour. So we do expect them to be swinging quite badly on that. But the context of that sort of defences that they have is quite important. But yeah, it's going to be very, very tough for them. But the Conservatives as well, interestingly, they're defending some council areas which were last contested in 2021. Now, 2022 and 2021 are worlds apart. 2021, the vaccine bounce. Boris Johnson is riding high in the polls. So they have a really high watermark to defend. Places like Hampshire and Reform could be doing really, really well there. And we could see sort of 30-point swings between the Conservatives and Reform in some of those areas, whereas 2021 that we're looking at as the last time those seats were up.
Yeah, it's going to be a bloodbath, let's be honest. I am interested to look at this from a leadership perspective, because you look at some of those names there of the council areas with these huge swings, Cannock Chase, Dudley. I mean, look, you just have to map over the Westminster parliamentary map to know that these are critical swing constituencies as well, right? Nuneaton, Dudley, like Redditch, all these places, right? Walsall. I guess there'd be so many MPs looking at this and being worried about losing their seat at the election, right?
They really will. And it will be the case that as we look through these results and we start thinking, OK, if that was a general election, if we're looking at constituencies here, these seats are all going. They're all probably going to Reform, although some will be going to other parties. And a lot of these cabinet members will be threatened, and they will look at these results, potentially see all the councillors in their constituency gone in some of these areas where they are all up. And that could really accelerate some of the conversations we're hearing around leadership challenges, although, of course, we'll have to wait and see.
Can I just ask to step back, and how much do you think this does imply what's going to happen at a general election? Because, in a local election, as you said, there's a bit of a protest vote. You kind of have your ideal person you're willing to pick without kind of considering, oh, I don't want this party, or I do want to remove the government. I mean, do you think when we get to the next general election, we'll come back to a much higher portion of the vote just going towards two particular parties again, or not?
Traditionally, that has always happened, and we have seen people more willing to vote for, let's say, smaller parties in local elections, and then switching back in general elections to large parties. That relationship appears to be breaking down. In 2024, we saw really low vote shares for both Labour and the Conservatives. In the current polling, the national polling, we're essentially seeing, in a lot of the local election projections, a reflection of that national vote intention. And people are very, very frustrated with Labour and the Conservatives. They're turning to Reform, they're turning to Greens, they're telling us that they're going to vote for them in these locals, and they're pretty sure they want to vote for them at the next set of general elections too, as and when they come. Of course, we'll have to wait and see, but it does seem like people are more willing than ever now to embrace that sort of multi-party politics in general election settings as well as in local council elections.
Really interesting. Patrick, thanks so much for joining us. Good
Pleasure.
to see you.
God, what a week it's going to be. It's going to be...
It's only 2 days away. I was like, what? Hold on, no, it's not. Yep, it's already Tuesday.
It's here. A big week for Keir Starmer, a big week for people, across the country, including in Scotland and Wales, of course, when we're going to have the parliamentary elections there too.
Now, there are over 7,000 languages currently spoken around the... Did you know that?
No, I didn't know.
7,000?
That's a lot.
Blimey. But by the end of this century, half of those will be gone. Well, still 3,500.
Yeah, but 3,500 to be lost.
Less, yeah.
Our next guest, the journalist and author Sophia Smith-Gala, travelled across the world to discover some of those dying languages. Now, she was inspired by the death of her nonna, who spoke an endangered Italian dialect.
Vola, colomba bianca, vola, diglielo tu che tornerò, dille che non sarà più sola.
Well, Sophia joins us now, the author of How to Kill a Language. A very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We were slightly joking there, but by saying there's 7,000 languages. I mean, how important is it that they all are maintained, or at least the vast majority is?
I think you're right to identify, though, that we don't hear about it. Why don't we ever hear about this glittering language diversity that the world has? We're set to lose these languages at this unprecedented rate because of all of the things that cost us, languages that are incredibly important to us. It's globalisation, it's what I talk about in the book, linguicide. This is the sort of systemic erasure and endangerment of language around the world. And that is the reason behind why we're losing so many. So languages are going without protection. In many cases, that they're actively being suppressed.
What a voice, by the way.
Oh, thank
well, you can really sing, can't you? What beautiful, beautiful music.
And that was us singing in Italian together.
So what was the... You said it was a particular dialect. Whereabouts is it?
So Italy, another thing we don't hear much about in the UK, but in Italy, there is enormous language diversity. Italy's a fairly young country, only unified not very long ago at all. And it has many, many regional languages besides Italian. We might be better familiar with Spain as a sort of similar example. We know Spain has Catalan, we know Spain has Basque, for example. Italy's the same, except that the languages have not quite had the minority language preservation and protection.
So where is this particular dialect from?
So Nonna spoke what we call il dialect. She spoke the Piacentais variety, but it is a language. It's Emilian. Imagine it as a different evolution of Vulgar Latin that grew up in Italy, Italian being another one such evolution.
Can you give us some of the language? Can you talk to us in it? It's lovely to hear to hear the song and the language and to...
Yeah, so an example that I always think about very fondly was if Nonna had a cup of tea and she said it wasn't sweet enough. In standard Italian, you would say non è dolce, non è abbastanza dolce or something. Nonna went, le mie douce. So completely different, Anyone who might be familiar with Italian would hear that that's a very distinctive sound.
You mentioned a lot of these languages aren't getting, I think you said, protected status. What exactly does that mean? Because presumably governments can't force people to speak a language or something of that ilk. So what does protected status mean for a language?
It can mean different things around the world. So in Europe, we do have a charter that protects minority languages. It might look different elsewhere. But linguicide, which is language loss, language endangerment, it can be one of two things, really. It can be overt or covert. So if we're thinking about overt linguicide, let's take, for example, in Russian-occupied areas of Ukraine, where the Russians have imposed Russian language and they've suppressed Ukrainian language. That's quite an obvious example of linguicide. And you have the State Language Commissioner in Ukraine valiantly fighting against that. Another example could be more covert, which is that Italy, being an excellent example, you have a number of minority languages that are simply left out of the minority language protection legislation. You might have people being shamed or sort of chastised for speaking a local language. You might have people, as has happened in Italy, people calling these languages dialects as a mean to devalue them when they are actually languages.
But if there is minority... I've never heard of this before, minority protection legislation. What does that do? It says we can't do what towards that language?
Just look at the UK. Look at Welsh language status in the UK. Take, for example, Scots and Gaelic in Scotland. Even Cornish has just had its status lifted and sort of better empowered, and it means that more resources need to be drafted in order to help the community continue the language. In some cases, this is like maintenance and stabilisation. In other cases and in other places, it will be revival, because it may be that the speaker number is so diminished at this point that you need a lot of work to get it back up again.
It makes me think a lot about the Welsh language, right? Because it feels like, people in Wales have been so firm and muscular in protecting the Welsh language, and it is actually quite incredible to see how widely it is still used. And I guess the historical context of that I find very interesting as well. The identity and the culture of the Welsh people is so much preserved through that language as well.
And it's a classic example of linguicide. The Welsh language has faced extensive pressure from English. It has faced extensive policies from the government in England saying we want them speaking English, not Welsh. And it took significant language activism. It took a very famous broadcast that happened in the 60s where a politician essentially said, we're going to lose, Welsh will disappear by the end of this century if we don't do something. And it's often that moment where there is a rallying cry, we've got to do something, that something happens. So I hope that my book can be part of that.
Sophia, thanks so much for joining us. Great to see you. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking more about that Hanta virus outbreak on a cruise ship in the South Atlantic.
A lot of local and national seats are up for grabs.
Waiting for the people's vote on who will sit in them.
It's your chance to have a say
on who has a seat at the table. Follow Sky News as we give you the best seats in the House.
From voting
to the results,
the analysis,
and what comes next. Join us for Vote 26. Get the full story fast on Sky News.
Sky News has been given exclusive data showing every Palestinian who has been killed in Gaza since the war began. Our analysis of this pattern in the killings suggests that entire families were wiped out in their homes or shelters. The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparent journalism from Sky News.
We located footage of the aid drop to a tent camp in central Gaza.
These airdrops are falling in extremely populated areas.
We combine traditional reporting with advanced analysis of satellite imagery, social media, and other open source information. Now, this is just one of the strikes and incidents we've been able to geolocate across Gaza.
Sky News has found Nazi speeches and marching music have been used as background sound on tens of thousands of TikTok videos as far-right groups try and spread their message.
Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. There's no evidence yet of foul play at Heathrow. It shows weaknesses that enemies could take advantage of. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. Supporters say it saves lives and projects American power and influence.
I think we would generally be called far-right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in.
A lot of people are going to be, why are you making Nazi references? Right. Well, why wouldn't I?
Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
It's a racial association. I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Welcome back. Well, in the sport, Manchester City's title hopes took a hit yesterday after Everton produced a stunning late fight back to salvage...
the other way around.
The other way around, yeah. Everton were 3-1 up.
Man City fought back.
Yeah. But it still meant that Man City took a hit. Here are some of the early goals. And we now need to see a little bit of the... This is the late equaliser from Manchester City, making it 3-3.
Yeah.
We're going to get the sport.
If you're looking at the screen saying Everton come back and you're thinking, what game did I watch from last night? You are right. Don't worry, we're wrong. We'll correct it for the next hour.
But up next, let's talk a little bit more about that outbreak of a rodent-borne virus on a cruise ship, which we've been talking about throughout the morning. We're joined now by Dr. Raj Arora. Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. What is a Hanta virus?
So Hanta virus is essentially a virus that is carried by rodents, so it's not carried by humans, and it can spread through urine droppings of rats and rodents. In the UK, it's actually not very prevalent. There's very low risk here. So I know there's lots of concern and worry around it, but actually it is typically found in areas like, see on the cruise ship, where it can then spread and obviously pass on by rodent through rodents, so yes.
How risky are cruise ships more generally as well?
I think because if you've got, say, rodents that are infested and they're also multiplying and spreading it across the cruise ship, that's kind of the worry here. It's less likely. Obviously, in the UK, you have got a black vole, which is the main sort of rodent that does carry the virus, but it's not typically, you know, in every area, and it's not something that we see very often.
Is it only rodent to human, or is it, once a human has it, possible that it's human to human or not?
Well, any virus, as we know, can, you know, become human to human. There is always that, you know, chance that can happen, but at the moment we're seeing rodent to human.
In terms of you know, we obviously know 3 people have died and a number of them are still in a critical condition. What's the sort of treatment that is required after catching it?
So there's different treatments required. Typically with hantavirus, what you see is like renal syndrome, so kidney issues, and so that's what the focus will be on, trying to obviously make sure that they're, you know, from that perspective, they are hydrated, they're getting the treatment they need for their kidneys as well. So that's the main sort of treatment you'll see, but it can be varying in each individual depending on what their symptoms are and how they are obviously showcasing. The virus is different for everybody. If you're somebody who already has comorbidities, for example, and you catch hantavirus just like any other virus, you are more obviously at risk of poor outcomes. So from that perspective, you have to be more careful.
Dr. Raj Arora, thank you so much for joining us. Squeezed at the end there as we were, much appreciated. We've got a busy show still to come after a short break. Of course, we'll be breaking down all of the latest in the Middle East as, of course, the ceasefire is over and oil prices trade at around $113 a barrel for Brent as a result.
We'll also be looking ahead to Keir Starmer's meeting in number 10 with members of leaders, I guess, in everything from culture to policing to universities to try and tackle what he's describing as the scourge of anti-Semitism. So building up to that in the late half of the programme as well.
We'll be right back after this.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty.
War isn't pretty.
Good morning. It is 8 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Rich and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, a very good morning from me as well. Lots ahead.
As the US sinks 7 small boats in the Strait of Hormuz, Iran warns there's no military solution and says Trump's Project Freedom is more like Project Deadlock.
Sir Keir Starmer says attacks against British Jews are a crisis for all of us and calls on leaders from across public life to come up with a coordinated response.
The World Health Organization identifies 7 cases of Hanta virus as 3 people die on board a cruise ship in the South Atlantic.
Also today, we're talking to journalist, magazine editor, broadcaster and author Tina Brown about the truth and about President Trump.
UK airlines are given the green light to cancel or consolidate flights to conserve jet fuel. But what does that mean for your summer holiday?
A very good morning to you. Well, the ceasefire in the Middle East is over, with reports of multiple strikes on ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran claims to have struck an American warship, while the US denied that and says it destroyed 7 of Iran's fast boats.
Well, tensions have been escalating ever since Donald Trump launched what he called Project Freedom. So that was the operation for the US military to guide commercial ships out of the strait. Donald Trump said Iran would be blown off the face of the earth, in his words, if it attacked US ships. And Iran has said there's no military solution to the crisis.
In the wider region, Sir Keir Starmer was one of many to condemn Iranian strikes on the United Arab Emirates, saying the UK stands in solidarity with the UAE after an Iranian strike caused a large fire and 3 injuries at the key oil port of Fujairah. Our correspondent Lisa Holland has this.
The battle for the Strait of Hormuz appears to be underway. Iranian state television showing these pictures and claiming warning shots have been fired at American warships. America released images of its own showcasing its personnel in the Persian Gulf as it claimed to have destroyed 7 Iranian boats and shot down Iranian missiles and drones as it launched what it called Project Freedom to support, not escort, trapped commercial vessels through the vital shipping lane. It says 2 US-flagged ships have now made it through, though Iran disputes this.
They don't have a Navy anymore. Think of it. They had 159 ships. How many do they have left, Kelly? Out of 159, take a guess. She's very smart. 0.
Iran's government continues to insist it will meet the Americans head-on. Its foreign ministry spokesman, when asked why Iran doesn't roll over to its superpower adversary, replied, "We are a superpower too." And on state TV, a warning from the Iranian military.
Maritime movements that do not conform to the declared principles of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Navy will face serious risks, and violating vessels will be stopped with force.
Iran has released a map claiming new control lines of the sea between Iranian territory and the United Arab Emirates. Currently, around 1,000 vessels and 20,000 maritime crew are stuck in the Persian Gulf. With America claiming a South Korean vessel has been hit, the real test is whether it can entice trapped crews through the blockaded strait.
It is quite disturbing, and my crew morale is again, going down. So it is really very upset to know again they are attacking merchant ships. Our prime priority is to keep the vessel safe at the moment and just maintain our position and wait for right opportunity and wait for war to come an end, or wait for the Strait of Hormuz to reopen safely.
But some are optimistic.
Potentially, it could work if you're able to deny the Iranians the situational awareness and you're able to provide a level of assurance and protection to the ships that go through. Then potentially it could work. But we also have to keep in mind that the Iranians have many cards up their sleeve, and they still have the mine threat that they could potentially put into play. And so the situation is potentially very dynamic.
There's no doubt this is a war now in its third month, which has entered a high-stakes and dangerous phase. Lisa Holland, Sky News.
Well, just to give you a bit of an update, because there is some key moments we're expecting throughout the day on this. We know the Pentagon and the White House are going to be giving a press conference later on Iran. Pete Hegseth is going to be leading that as well. There'll also be a press briefing by the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, at the White House. That is going to be at 8 p.m. UK time as well. So very interesting to see what they have to say on those developments.
But that first update from Pete Hegseth is 8 a.m. Eastern time, 1 p.m. UK time. We'll bring it to you live here on Sky News. It is all, of course, moving oil prices. In fact, today, fairly calm relative to the prior couple of days, but still significantly elevated over the course of the last week or so. Brent crude, the international gauge for oil prices, is at 113.6 this morning. So clearly, essentially double where we started the year. January started about 60. So it just gives you that scale of inflation to feed through to the system if these very elevated levels are maintained.
Let's talk about what is going on here in Westminster, because later this morning we're going to get more on the Prime Minister's response to rising anti-Semitism in the wake of the Golders Green stabbing. So he's hosting a group of community leaders in Number 10 to call for a whole-of-society response.
Well, Keir Starmer will meet leaders from business, civil society, health, culture, higher education and policing, and ask them to reflect on how they can tackle anti-Semitism in their sector. Ali's here with us to discuss. And Ali, I mean, is this going to be just more talk, or do we expect some concrete action to come?
Well, I think that's what the Jewish community want to see. You know, I was in Golders Green last week. I'm sure you saw the images where the Prime Minister visited that Jewish volunteer ambulance service, and outside people were protesting, shouting, "Show your face, Keir Starmer, Jew harmer." What they were saying to me is they want to see, you can see the pictures there, action, not words. So what are we going to see now? Well, this is a Prime Minister hosting leaders from a whole range of sectors. And how it's going to work is they're going to be cabinet ministers, so the Education Secretary, the Home Secretary, the Health Secretary, the Culture Secretary. They're going to be talking to, for example, Sir Mark Rowley, the Commissioner of the Met Police, other police chiefs, Arts Council England, the National Theatre, the CBI, Vice-Chancellors of universities. And they basically want to find out how anti-Semitism is affecting all those sectors and what can be done. But, you know, as you say, the question is this just words? Is this action? You spoke to Steve Reid earlier. He's pledged another £1 million, actually, I should say, into tackling anti-Semitism. That brings it to 58 billion. Million. I keep saying billion, sorry. Overall, million.
I was interested in what Steve Reid said about banning marches as well. You know, he was talking about the new powers and the crime and the policing and crime bill. And I asked him specifically, you know, does that mean that if a march is happening every weekend in an area, you could ban it? And he was like, yeah, that is exactly what it means. And that could be controversial.
That was a really interesting answer because, look, I mean, there's obviously a balance to be struck with freedom of speech and people who legitimately want to go out and protest what's happening in Gaza. The Prime Minister says he wants to crack down on it. You got an even stronger line of thought there from Steve Reid, and Kemi Badenoch and the Chief Rabbi both been calling for a moratorium on these protests. And the Prime Minister was also saying, you know, this is about words, phrases that are being used on these marches. So I think this is, you know, this is obviously a very live debate that's happening, and it looks like there is going to be quite a significant crackdown.
Ali, great stuff. Thanks so much for that. More to come on that topic, of course, and as and when the Prime Minister is out and about today, we'll bring you more coverage of it. In a few minutes as well, we'll be speaking to the media legend Tina Brown about truth-telling and her warning that investigative journalism is under threat. That's coming up in 5 minutes' time.
Later in the programme, we'll also be talking to the actor Mark Gatiss about his starring role in a political satire. Time for political sorrows now.
Yeah, exactly. We need a bit of humour along the way. But first, the World Health Organization has identified 7 confirmed or suspected cases of Hanta virus following an outbreak on a luxury cruise ship in the Atlantic.
So 3 people on board the ship have already died. A British man is currently in a critical condition as well, but they can't get off the boat, right? So the ship is being held off the coast of Cape Verde in West Africa with evacuations planned for 150 people on board. But hantavirus is a rare but highly lethal illness spread by rats and mice, and you pick it up through droppings. Our health correspondent Ashish Joshi has been taking a look.
A number of passengers on board a cruise ship have died and others have become extremely sick with suspected hantavirus. Here's what you need to know. The cruise ship, the MV Hondius, is carrying about 150 passengers and was travelling between Argentina and Cape Verde when passengers fell ill. The ship is currently outside the port of Praia, the capital of Cape Verde. To protect the local population, passengers are not allowed to disembark here. This passenger says he's on board the ship.
What's happening right now is very real for all of us here. We're not just a story. We're not just headlines. We're people. All we want right now is to feel safe, to have clarity, and to get home.
According to the cruise operator, Oceanwide Expeditions, the first fatality was on the 11th of April when a Dutch passenger on board the cruise ship died. On the 24th of April, the deceased passenger and his wife were disembarked on St. Helena, an island in the South Atlantic Ocean. But 3 days later, the 27th of April, the cruise operator was told the wife had also died during her return journey. On the 27th of April, a British national became ill and was evacuated to South Africa for emergency care. Then, on the 2nd of May, a German passenger died aboard the ship. Hantavirus is a rodent-borne virus and is part of a family of zoonotic viruses. That's diseases that can be passed from animals to humans.
If you've got mice or rats on a cruise ship, and particularly if the company isn't really vigilant in rodent control and sanitizing surfaces and segregating passengers from any droppings, it can be, very dangerous.
So, how does the virus infect humans? The virus starts off contained in rodent feces, urine or saliva. Infected particles become airborne, and these can be breathed in by humans. Initial symptoms are very similar to flu-like symptoms, including muscle aches, fever, headache, and coughs. These can later develop into a serious infection of the lung or the kidneys, leading to organ failure. The incubation period, that's the time from infection to when the first symptoms appear, is somewhere between 1 to 8 weeks, but usually around 2 to 4 weeks. In extremely rare cases, the disease can be spread from human to human.
Hantavirus is not usually spread like COVID-19 or influenza, although it's a respiratory virus. For most hantaviruses, casual person-to-person spread is almost very rare.
Although there are antivirals that can help to manage symptoms, there is no cure for hantavirus. Viral outbreaks on cruises are not uncommon, but it's rare to have one that is so potentially dangerous. Officials are still working out how and where the passengers became infected and if all of them are sick with hantavirus.
Well, let's talk to Ollie now. It's the most alarming story, I have to say, but you've been talking to people on the boat.
Yes, I've been speaking to one passenger who got off the boat in St. Helena. We've also, in the last few minutes, had a statement from the family of the 2 Dutch nationals who died on board. They want to remain anonymous, they want their privacy to be protected, but this family statement says the beautiful journey that they experienced together was abruptly and permanently cut short. We're still unable to comprehend that we've lost them. We wish to bring them home and commemorate them in peace and in privacy. Now, one of the women who was on board this vessel, who disembarked in St. Helena, had been in quite close contact with one of these 2 Dutch nationals who had died. And obviously she was a bit concerned, having been on board the boat, having been in such close proximity, that she wasn't getting much information from Oceanwide Expeditions. That's the company which runs this vessel. She then complained to them, and they've acknowledged that there's this serious situation that's happening on board and told her to keep an eye out on her symptoms and to get in touch with the authorities with any sort of health provision that she's got in case she gets any of these symptoms. Also, we know that the cruise line has been trying to exert as much pressure as possible, diplomatic pressure, getting in touch with various representatives to get the passengers on board off as quickly as possible. We know that the plan was to go to Cape Verde. That now looks like it's not going to happen, but there are these 3 nationals on board who need a medical evacuation, and so the urgency is to try to get them off this ship that we can see now on our screens. And a UK government spokesperson has told Sky News that the FCDO, the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office consular teams have been stood up across the UK, South Africa, Spain and Portugal to support British nationals, and we're working around the clock with our international partners, including the cruise ship operator. So pressure from all sides, it seems.
Olive, thanks so much. Now, the annual Truth Tellers Summit, takes place tomorrow in London, bringing together media and cultural leaders in collaboration and celebration of global journalism. But it also brings a serious message about the importance of brave frontline reporting in a time of AI and disinformation. Delighted to say that we're joined now by the summit's co-founder, a journalist, magazine editor, author, all-round legend, Tina Brown. Tina, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Thank you so much for joining us, particularly ahead of such a busy day you've got tomorrow for the Truth Tellers Summit, which, of course, is in memory of your dear, late, great husband, Harry Brown.
Harry Evans.
Harry Evans, sorry.
Don't lump him with my name.
No, sorry, Harry Evans. And when you snapshot the state of journalism today in the two countries you spend the most time in, UK and US, are you dismayed overall, or is there stuff to celebrate? Does it differ between the two countries?
Well, there's a war on truth going on, let's face it. There is an absolute sort of disintegration of trust, I think, in both America and the UK more. Not as much in the UK as in the US. But there is a war on information because it is the combination, obviously, of the disinformation, the digital chaos. But we also have a president in Trump, who spends his time spewing out complete, unsupported facts. And that has actually eroded so much trust in the US that, people don't really know what to believe anymore. So the Truth Tellers Summit really began to celebrate my husband Harry's legacy. He was the great editor of the Sunday Times who broke some of the biggest stories, in UK journalistic history. The Philby spy story was the Sunday Times story. He broke the thalidomide story, which was about how the thalidomide, the drug that pregnant women took and caused, deformed children to be born. All of these were his great stories. So I wanted to celebrate that and to show that this is still alive and well, that actually, despite all the kind of dross around and despite the disinformation, despite the whole digital noise, actually, democracy is underpinned by the courageous and rigorous work of journalists who are really, many of them, unsung. I mean, you don't go into journalism to make a ton of money. You go into journalism because you have a sort of passionate calling and a vocation. So I thought it'd be wonderful to valorise these people instead of, the press are constantly trashed, right? But there are actually incredibly brave, courageous people. They're dying all the time in these wars. That they're being targeted, in these wars, in the Middle East wars. They're dying, every day. They are being oppressed by lawsuits. They're being hassled and intimidated. But they go on doing their great work, whether it's in the West or, of course, in places like Russia, where they're in huge danger when they do these things. So we brought these people in from all over the world. So we have, like, the Nobel laureate Maria Ressa. We have Christian Amanpour, of course, from the UK, who's such a hero here. We have Beth Rigby, your very own, who's incredibly dogged in her political reporting. And we have amazing journalists too, from Russia, from Hungary, from Lebanon, all over the globe, who are standing up for truth and who are fiery and fabulous. And I think you leave the hall absolutely sort of inspired to think that, thank God we have these dogged people who are willing to bring out the truth.
Is the Epstein saga an example of where journalism has taken the lead? I mean, in 2008, you were one of the first to publish kind of reporting on the sort of sweetheart deal he got first time round in 2008. And amazing to think that was as long ago as it was. But when we consider the repercussions and the extent they have been felt more by senior figures in the UK than in the US, is it an example of A, where journalism taking the lead, but B, where the UK has sort of outdone itself relative to the US, perhaps, on this?
Well, yes. I mean, obviously, without journalism, we wouldn't know anything about Epstein. And he came, when I was at the Daily Beast and we published those first stories, he came into my office to threaten me.
Did he really?
Yeah, he did. It was very sinister. I was in the art department, came back to my office, and there was Jeffrey Epstein sitting in my office. I'll never know how he got past the reception. And he said to me, "You just stop. You stop." And I told him to leave, and we published the stories, which were about how he got this deal, you know, with he was charged with harassing one girl as opposed to the massive amount of malfeasance he was doing. I do think that the UK has been far more effective at actually, you know, getting some accountability. We've had really no accountability in the US. I mean, only Ghislaine Maxwell, you know, his accomplice, is sitting in prison. But there have been no other arrests. There have been shamings. There have been, you know, rich, powerful people who've been getting bad press for it. But we haven't ever yet discovered who else was, you know, sleeping, harassing, you know, and raping underage girls. We haven't found that out yet. Whereas at least in the UK, you know, there have been, you know, real fallout from the Epstein case with, you know, Prince Andrew and, of course, you know, the information that was being leaked by Peter Mandelson.
Both obviously deny wrongdoing. We'll see what happens there. Does President Trump care about the midterms enough to back down on Iran, do you think?
I don't think that he cares about the midterms like he might have done were he running again. The fact is that at this point, he really only cares about these massive, like, big shot splashes that he makes, where he sort of goes to war, drops bombs. I mean, this is really what he wants to do. He wants to be, you know, the guy who just runs the world, essentially. But this time it's gone horribly badly wrong with Iran. And, you know, if he just stopped with Venezuela, you know, it might have been, you know, he might have got away with things. But Iran has proved to be a disaster, in a sense. And he's way over his head. You know, America's a country with no memory going, you know, involved with a country which is all memory. And Trump doesn't realise and understand the Iranians. But, you know, this again is where, like, the reporting on it all is so incredibly important because, you know, the news bulletins are very misleading. I mean, the other day Trump said people who criticise the fact that the war's not going as well as he says are treasonous. Okay, that's a Putin word. I mean, critics, journalists. People with a sceptical view, that's the whole point of America. And it's the whole point of the Truth Tellers Summit. People who question, people who inquire, who say, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. Let's investigate.
Do you think there's been any turning points, maybe triggered by the Iran war, in terms of whether those truthful messages get to cut through again? I mean, when you see the scale for the first couple of years of the kissing of the ring from very important people, has that changed at all? Do you see a change in direction or not?
Well, I think that Trump has thoroughly sort of flattened, you know, inquiry. It is true. One of his techniques is to sort of flood the zone where he just puts out so many stories that, you know, he thinks that the news cycle will just keep moving on. But actually there's been dogged reporting now about what's happening. The journalists are not just lying down and repeating what he wants about the war, and it gets him extremely angry. But they're doing it. And, you know, I'm excited about, there are two Lebanese journalists who are coming tomorrow who I think are going to be really, really good because people ignore the fact that, of course, you know, Lebanon is also being bombed in this war. And they are going to be telling us about what we're not seeing or hearing at all. So I think, you know, he's definitely... you know, he's caused a tremendous amount of erosion. One of the things that's exciting and which we're showing at Truth Tellers is the new techniques of investigative journalism, because it's not now just about sort of running big pieces and hoping people read them. I mean, people don't read them, so that doesn't work anymore. What we've got, we're showcasing these three journalists who are forensically looking at, you know, video, camera, you know, footage from cameras, surveillance videos, body cams, drones. I mean, all these things, these electronic things are sending in information, and investigative journalists now can trawl through this and piece together the truth in ways that they really couldn't before. But it takes a great deal of patience, it takes time, it takes money.
Two more quick final questions. I mean, you mentioned Harry's unbelievable successes of investigative journalism at a time when, you know, it's fair to say that the newspapers made money, so it was easier to fund it. Do you think the pendulum will swing back where truth tellers, not necessarily easily, but are able to make a significant profit and be self-sustainable? Or will it always need to be something that's somewhat of a public good, somewhat backed by either governments or big corporations who care about it?
You need investment in media, because the fact is that yes, of course, you know, journalists the subscription models can create profit centres, but you have to have the investment. And that is really one of the themes as well of our summit. You know, truth costs money. You need time to investigate things. And I'm hoping, actually, the great excitement today is that the BBC has just announced that they're doing a 6-part drama series about Harry's life. It's called Dragon Slayers, and it's starring Matthew Rhys as Harry. I mean, he'd be over the moon at this, amazing news. And I think it's going to... it's produced by the same people who did Mr. Bates and the Post Office. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to reignite a sense of, how truth-telling is the most... Yeah, celebrate it.
We look forward to that. And congratulations to him up there on that
Indeed.
great accolade. Just finally, quickly, because we're nearly out of time. King, last week, how well did he do?
I think he did brilliantly. And again, I think that the most important thing I think that he said was words matter. It was a really important thing he said. He said, when America's words matter, because America has the First Amendment. America has made free speech, free journalism, an article of faith. And so when the words of the president, echo around the world and they're mendacious sometimes, it matters. And we look to America to be the bastion of the First Amendment, the bastion of free press. We must uphold that. Otherwise, one of the great pillars of American democracy will float away.
Hear, hear. Tina, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you do. The Truth Tellers Summit tomorrow, Tina Brown.
And you can watch it. You can stream it. If you go to, just type in Truth Tellers and it'll come up.
Just to say as well, just sharing that story about Epstein, I think, I hate to kind of blow our own trumpet as an industry, but it does just show, I think, the importance and the difficulty of proper journalism, holding people to account who are very rich, very powerful, cost money. Can be difficult.
And lawfare, they sue.
Yeah.
And that, again, when it comes to money, if you don't have any investment, you can't fight the lawsuits.
Exactly.
Tina, great stuff.
Right.
Thank you. Now, 2 people have been killed and 3 seriously injured after a car rammed into crowds in Germany.
So the car drove into a pedestrian zone in the eastern city of Leipzig in what officials believe was deliberate.
The victims, a 63-year-old woman and a 77-year-old man, both German citizens. The incident happened yesterday afternoon in a busy shopping area of the city.
And the driver was a 33-year-old man with German citizenship who was arrested on suspicion of murder and attempted murder. We don't currently know why he did it. The motives remain under investigation.
It's very likely that it was a single and isolated incident. It was a perpetrator, and we assume that Leipzig is absolutely safe and people can use the pedestrian area. A 33-year-old German citizen was arrested, and everything else we're going to talk about once we know the developments.
Now, the stars of showbiz, well, the stars of everything, I think, have descended on the Met Gala.
Not all of them. Some of them were boycotted it, we believe, in protest of the people who were sponsoring it, which is Jeff Bezos, the Amazon owner, and, of course, his wife also involved as well. The theme was fashion as art, but I think a lot of the focus really, not just on the dresses this time, but also on the fact that a protest group actually claimed to have hidden bottles of fake urine in the days leading up to the event.
Which was, I guess, alluded to the fact that they suggested some Amazon workers apparently in conditions where they have to go to the toilet in a bottle, which is the reason for that particular angle of the protest. Here are some of the pictures of the arrivals. I don't know. That's Madonna, apparently. And we saw earlier as well, Beyonce and I think Blake Lively as well is up next. That's Kim Kardashian now.
Coming up, we are going to be returning to the war in Iran. The ceasefire really does appear to be over. Both sides reportedly firing on ships passing through the Gulf. What is happening to Trump's Project Freedom? We'll try and find out.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news.
Being a Sky News presenter.
I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to warn.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Gala Hakim.
Welcome back. The ceasefire in the Middle East has come to an end, and there's reports of strikes on ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran claims to have struck an American warship, while the US denies that and says it's destroyed 7 of Iran's fast boats.
Well, let's speak now to Jasmine El-Gamal, political analyst, former Middle East advisor at the US Department of Defense. Thank you so much for being with us. First of all, just your take on the state of the ceasefire. Is it over?
Well, in practice, obviously, it does seem to be over, given everything that we've witnessed over the last 24 hours. We are essentially at the same place where we've continued to come back to over the last several weeks, which is an impasse, because you have two countries, Iran and the US, who have fundamentally different misunderstandings of what this conflict is about. Whereas Iran sees this as something that should be negotiated diplomatically, the US continues to see this as a military problem to be solved, and Iran is responding in kind.
Interestingly, in the last sort of 36 hours, the ceasefire has obviously broken down. It's included Iran striking and trying to strike the UAE quite directly. What do you make of that, and what are the implications of that?
That's right. This is the issue with the UAE is a little bit of a vicious cycle, because when Iran first started attacking the Gulf states, the UAE really got the brunt of it. And across the board, Gulf states were pretty shocked and betrayed about the Iranian response, not only because they had tried to stop Donald Trump from going to war with Iran, but also because each of these Gulf states have sort of made their peace with Iran, however uneasy or however superficial. They had all decided to address Iran diplomatically. So when Iran started to attack the Gulf, oil infrastructure, civilian infrastructure, the Gulf states started to split as to what their response should be. And the UAE was the most forward-leaning in publicly doubling down on its strategic alliance with the US and Israel, therefore inviting even more Iranian attacks on it. So a bit of a vicious cycle there. And Iran also, of course, continues to try to drive up the cost of this war for Donald Trump and his allies in the Gulf so that they could bring it to an end quickly.
It's not is the UAE to blame for its response?
Oh, no, I don't think. I mean, there's no, certainly the Iranian response against the Gulf states was extremely heavy-handed. When I was at the Pentagon, and back then, President Obama just came out and shared how Prime Minister Netanyahu was also trying to get him to go to war with Iran. And when we would do scenario planning, as we would for any potential conflict, an Iranian response on US military targets in the Gulf was always expected, was always on the table. But Iran did go far above and beyond that with the Gulf states. And the Gulf states felt like they had to defend themselves, protect themselves, but also prevent this from being a precedent for similar action in the future.
Yeah, it's interesting you're saying how it's something that was, I guess, kind of gamed out previously, as you'd expect, I suppose, but still really interested to get that insight. Is there any off-ramp that you think is realistic for this war?
Look, the off-ramp has always been for Donald Trump to declare victory and say that he, decapitated Iranian leadership, he sunk their navy, he degraded their ballistic missile capability. There's a long list of things that Donald Trump could say that he accomplished. And if he could get to a deal with Iran over the Strait of Hormuz, which ironically was open before the US and Israel decided to strike Iran, then he could also declare some sort of victory and claim credit for reopening the strait. The problem, of course, is Iran has realized that it has this leverage now that it is able to control the strait. It is able to potentially continue to get fees from ships passing through, and it doesn't want to let go of that leverage until it extracts pretty significant concessions from President Trump on issues that it cares about. So they are at a very difficult impasse here. But again, I keep coming back to the point that it's not an impasse that's going to be solved with further military pressure, because that's always been known to just make Iran entrench in its positions even further and ride it out, betting on the fact that it can impose a higher cost on the US, on its allies, and on global markets than the US can impose on Iran.
Jasmine, thanks so much for joining us. Good to see you.
You too. Thank you for having me.
I'm going to talk next about peptides. If you've not heard of these, they are short amino acids, apparently, that you inject into your body. And apparently, the PR pitches, they can help with weight loss, muscle growth, skin health, you name it. But realistically, it's a total wild west.
You might have heard of Ozempic or Wegovy, which of course are approved for use, but many are being flogged online, have not been through any medical testing. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner has been investigating and warning this report does mention the use of needles.
I think we need to have a pep talk, a peptide pep talk.
Peptides to help them gain muscle, peptides for them to be tanner.
This is your sign to hop on a peptide.
The new craze taking America by storm.
I'm sure by this point you've heard about
peptides.
Peptides. Are you on peptides?
That's the collective name for these short-chain amino acids that, when injected, stimulate the body's natural processes synthetically.
After trying nearly every peptide on the market.
Some, like insulin, have been around for decades, but we're talking about a new Wild West of unproven peptides.
The answer is yes.
But right now I'm doing Penialon, Epitalon, HCG, Retatrutide, very popular on the internet right now, the Wolverine blend, which is BPC 157, TB 500, NAD+, hormone therapy, TRT.
It is like a pharmacy in here.
It's a real pharmacy, yeah.
Jacob describes his body as a science experiment. His hypothesis that peptides make you stronger, healthier, and better looking. You call that the Wolverine blend?
So if you ever see the movie in the Wolverine, if he gets stabbed, if he gets shot, if he gets whatever, his body just regenerates so fast that he gets healed automatically. So they call it that because it makes your body heal very quickly.
The benefits are debated and the long-term effects on humans largely unknown. Every morning for Jacob starts the same way. A large handful of pills and several injections.
And then our Wolverine. Trying to mix up what side you go on.
This is the last one.
One more. Got my NAD.
I'm finding it a little uncomfortable watching you. I'm worried for you. I'm worried for your health.
Well,
just doing like one after the other, and
in general, a lot of people say that. I am healthier because I'm doing it.
Are you concerned though about sort of the lack of studies, fact that no one has tested this potion of drugs over 10 years and decided that that's okay and it's not going to do you long-lasting damage?
Sure, and there's a risk to be associated with everything. You might be right? Maybe I die at 50 because of this. But during that 50 years, I'll have way more fun than anybody else. Or I might live to 200 because I'm doing things like the Epitalon.
Our nation's food, fitness.
Many of these peptides are not approved by the US drug regulator known as the FDA. But Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is using his power to try and expand access to them.
Peptides are like supplements. Supplements are not regulated in that way by FDA. Peptides are not supposed to be regulated.
Not only for infections, but just they might inject it wrong.
This biologist believes some non-approved peptides could be very dangerous.
really doesn't make sense for Kennedy to reverse course. And I don't see any good reasons, like there's no new data or anything like that to justify this. My worry is in 5 or 10 years, we're going to see an outbreak of cancers amongst peptide users. If there's precancerous cells hanging around, if you're giving them a signal to grow more and you're giving them new blood vessels, you could turn a precancerous little blob into a new cancer.
But the warnings are not putting off a growing number of the fitness community who use peptides.
A BPC TB500 for injuries. I was running retro 2 peptide, which wasn't for me. And then I was running some more, and it hasn't worked.
OK, you're on 4 of them at the moment?
Yeah, but I cycle through them.
OK.
Because I don't like putting things in my body all the time.
Are you concerned about the lack of study?
If you can go out and go drink alcohol every weekend, why are you concerned about something that could potentially heal your body and make you perform better and healthier?
Not on peptides. I don't know. I think I'm just really young and I'm starting out my fitness career right now. Just doing natural things as I can as I grow.
Many people are turning to these injectables, viewing them as a cheat code, a quick fix for all manner of perceived problems. Peptides are going mainstream fast. Science can't keep up. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Tampa, Florida.
Well, we've been reporting, of course, on the latest lack of a ceasefire in the Strait of Hormuz. And, of course, that means oil prices are staying up longer. It means more concerns about jet fuel. And we're also learning that UK airlines have now been given the green light to either cancel or consolidate flights this summer to try and conserve jet fuel supplies.
What does that mean for holidays that you've got coming up? Let's talk once again to Simon Calder, travel correspondent at The Independent. Simon, good morning. Good to see you again. What's your latest update on how short we might be of jet fuel in the coming months?
Well, Goldman Sachs has just been putting out a report saying that the UK is more exposed than any other European country to the closure of the Strait of Hormuz because we depend so much on supplies from there. Having said that, talking to the airlines and to the government, they say they are not seeing any shortage over the next 6 to 8 weeks, which takes us neatly to the end of June. And of course, holidays, the peak season is July and August. And that's what this new government measure is looking at. The headline was, we're going to protect your holiday. How are you going to do that then? We're going to let airlines cancel flights, which sounds a bit counterintuitive. However, here's what's going to happen. If there's an airline with multiple flights, and a very good example, Lufthansa, 10 flights a day from Heathrow to Frankfurt, they, if to conserve fuel, can happily reduce that maybe to 6 or 7, telling you to travel on the 10:30, not the 8:30 or whatever. And if you do that enough, the theory goes that then important holiday flights where there aren't 10 flights a day, things like Manchester to Skiathos or Edinburgh to Crete, those will go ahead as normal. And certainly the budget airlines, EasyJet, Ryanair, TUI, Jet2 and Wizz Air are saying we're planning to run our full schedules.
So what's the advice, right? If you've got a summer holiday booked, or maybe you haven't booked the flight yet, or if you've got a summer holiday booked, are we at the stage now where it might be worth, getting kind of like a backup plan in the UK?
Oh, great question, but absolutely not. My advice is look forward to your holiday. That's what I'm doing, for goodness sake. Because part of the value of any holiday is the anticipation. If that turns to apprehension, and there are a lot of people who are getting worried by these stories, and there was the shadow minister Richard Holden at the weekend said all families could be split up like this. No, they couldn't. I mean, in a theory, they might be able to, but that's not going to happen. Your family holiday will go ahead as normal. Overwhelmingly, that's the odds. And if there is a problem with your flight, then you've got the fantastic air passenger rights rules on your side. So, for instance, I've got a flight from Luton to Mykonos. Very nice. If that gets cancelled, it's genuinely not my problem. It's the airline's problem. They've got to find some way of getting me maybe via Athens to Mykonos. And you can rely upon that because the government has also stressed that the airlines must obey these rules and they are very much on the passenger side.
Of course, there are great places to go on holiday in the UK too, we should say, and fly the flag in that regard. My question to you, Simon, is how are you so relaxed about this, given that we've gotten to the month of May. The Strait isn't reopened when, rewind the clock a month or so, people were saying if we get through April and it's still not open, we're in real trouble.
Oh, very much so.
So how have we solved this problem?
Well, there's growing confidence, and that is simply because if you happen to own an oil refinery somewhere in the world which is not the wrong side of the Strait of Hormuz, you are very much focused on the most profitable part of your output being aviation fuel.
Because aviation fuel's
because the price has
shot up.
doubled, So typically crude is up 50%, but aviation fuel up 100%. And so therefore you are going to be doing everything you can to maximise your production. And add that to a couple of other factors. You've been reporting how airlines like United and Lufthansa have been reducing their schedules. That's going to reduce demand. Etihad of Abu Dhabi and Qatar Airways of Doha are not flying at anything like their normal levels, so there's a bit more fuel sloshing around because of that. And the picture, well, absolutely, demand is going to be strongest in the UK in July and August. The picture is that there is nothing on the horizon at the moment that spells potential problems, and that's why I'm relaxed and looking forward to my holiday.
Too right. Can I ask you, while we've got you, about this cruise story as well? Because it sounds completely horrifying that you may have this outbreak of disease in a confined space and not be able to get off the ship. Is that normal, that you could be just trapped on a boat?
Yep. In the past hour or so, the World Health Organization has been spelling out what is going to happen to the 150 or so passengers and 70 crew on board the MV Hondius, currently moored off the Cape Verde capital of Praia. And the authorities on those islands are not letting passengers off, although there's 2 ill crew members who are hopefully going to be medevaced back in the next 24 hours or so, along with the partner of sadly, the German victim who died on board. Everyone else is going to have to sail to the Canary Islands, either Las Palmas or Santa Cruz probably, and they will, we understand, be allowed off there. It's not a normal virus, this. Yes, there is some person-to-person transmission. That's the thinking of the World Health Organization, but only very prolonged exposure of the sort you get if you were sharing a cabin with someone. So it is absolutely not on the same scale as COVID, or indeed the many gastric viruses that are sadly often floating around on cruise ships.
But just quickly, the decision-making around who does or doesn't get off, that's not down to the cruise ship and the cruise ship operator, it's down to the World Health Organization or the governments of the day. They can't be blamed for saying to the passenger, this big group of you are staying on, or is it their decision?
Very, very much the Cape Verde authorities. I'm sure everybody wants to get off that ship as soon as possible. But even when they do, in the Canaries, it's not just a question of, oh, the airport's over there, see you later. They are all going to be checked because the incubation period of hantavirus is up to 8 weeks.
8 weeks? Wow.
Gosh, Simon, thanks for joining us. Good to see you as always. Simon Calder.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. We'll bring the latest, of course, on that cruise ship and what is happening to the passengers there, and of course, as well, updating you on Iran in just a few moments' time. Don't go anywhere.
A lot of local and national seats are up for grabs.
Waiting for the people's vote on who will sit in them.
It's your chance to have a say
on who has a seat at the table.
Follow Sky News as we give you the best seats in the House.
From voting
to the results,
the analysis,
and what comes next.
Join us for Vote 26.
Get the full story fast on Sky News.
Sky News has been given exclusive data showing every Palestinian who has been killed in Gaza since the war began. Our analysis of this pattern in the killings suggests that entire families were wiped out in their homes or shelters. The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparent journalism from Sky News.
We located footage of the aid drop to a tent camp in central Gaza.
These airdrops are falling in extremely populated areas.
We combine traditional reporting with advanced analysis of satellite imagery, social media, and other open source information. Now, this is just one of the strikes and incidents we've been able to geolocate across Gaza.
Sky News has found Nazi speeches and marching music have been used as background sound on tens of thousands of TikTok videos as far-right groups try and spread their message.
Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. There's no evidence yet of foul play at Heathrow. It shows weaknesses that enemies could take advantage of. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. Supporters say it saves lives and projects American power and influence.
I think we would generally be called far-right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in.
A lot of people are going to be, why are you making Nazi references?
Right. Well, why wouldn't I?
Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
It's a racial association. I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Welcome back. Well, the latest data shows modern slavery referrals have gone up by a 617% margin since 2015.
It's an astonishing increase. British people now also account for record numbers of potential victims. 22% of those referred in 2025 were British nationals.
Eleanor Lyons is the UK's independent anti-slavery commissioner, and she joins us now. Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Morning.
This might be a rather basic question, but particularly in light of hearing, how stark these statistics are, how do we define modern slavery in this regard?
When we speak about modern slavery, we're speaking about victims who are being exploited, and it includes a broad spectrum of harm. So I'm referring to criminal exploitation, so young boys being used by drug gangs, county lines, sexual exploitation of young women and girls, and we're seeing that hugely rise amongst UK nationals, and also labour exploitation, so the kinds of things you see sometimes in nail bars, in construction sites, where people are forced to work, quite often without any pay, in unsafe situations, and they're being held against their will by their exploiters.
It's just also unbearably grim, to be honest. 617%. I mean, that is an astonishing rise. There's lots of threads to pull here, but on the British victims, I'm quite interested in this, because I think in your mind you kind of think of victims of slavery to be people who are trafficked into the UK, effectively. Who are the British victims? What kind of person are we talking about here?
Yeah, so when we look at what's happening with UK nationals, 10 years ago, there was only 200 victims of modern slavery that we identified who were UK nationals. Now, with the latest data, we see that that's gone up to thousands of victims. And behind those figures are predominantly British children, young boys and girls who are being exploited. We mainly see with boys that they're being criminally exploited, so they're being groomed by gangs to carry out criminal acts on their behalf. We see that across communities right around the country. And also, really worryingly, amongst British girls, they're beginning to be sexually exploited from a more young age. And we know that the internet is enabling it. I hear from survivors who tell me they were sitting in English class and they began to get targeted online with perpetrators texting them, sending them messages. And of course, it's making it far harder for parents and for teachers to spot what's going on. And I think that's a little bit behind the rise too.
What age are you talking about, just briefly?
So I've heard from girls as young as 10, and it's getting younger and younger that they're being sexually exploited. And young boys in communities, it's happening around the same age too. So we're seeing that rise right across the UK. And it is really alarming that now the largest cohort of victims of modern slavery in this country are UK nationals. like you said, we used to think of it as something that affected foreign nationals who were trafficked into this country, and that's still happening.
Yeah.
But that is not the largest majority that we're seeing.
Eleanor, thanks so much for joining us. We
Thank you.
appreciate it. Eleanor Lyons from the Independent Anti-Slavery Commission there.
Coming up next, we are going to bring you all the latest news. There's a lot of moving parts this morning, not least, of course, what is happening in Iran with the blockage of the Strait of Hormuz. We'll also, of course, update you on what's happening with that cruise ship. Are the passengers any closer to getting off and to getting treatment as well?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News. People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan. Been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty.
War isn't pretty.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, good morning from both of us. Lots to update you on today.
As the US sinks 7 small boats in the Strait of Hormuz, Iran warns there's no military solution to the crisis and says Trump's Project Freedom is more like Project Deadlock.
Keir Starmer says attacks against British Jews are a crisis for us all and calls in leaders from across public life to come up with a coordinated response.
The World Health Organization identifies 7 cases of Hanta virus as 3 people die on board a cruise ship in the South Atlantic.
We're also going to be talking about a rise in middle-class shoplifters. Supermarkets say new tech has led to a massive increase in the number of offences.
And on the power of political satire, the screenwriter, director and double Olivier Award winner Mark Gatiss will join us to talk about his new play.
Good morning. Thanks for being with us today. The ceasefire in the Middle East is over, with reports of multiple strikes on ships throughout the Strait of Hormuz. Iran claims to have struck an American warship. The US says it's destroyed 7 of Iran's fast boats.
Well, tensions have escalated since Donald Trump launched Project Freedom, an operation for the US military to guide commercial ships out of the strait. Donald Trump said Iran would be blown off the face of the earth if it attacked US ships, while Iran said there was no military solution to the crisis.
We've also heard from Keir Starmer, who put out a statement overnight condemning Iranian strikes on the United Arab Emirates and saying the UK stands in solidarity with the UAE. This is after an Iranian strike caused a big fire and 3 injuries on a key oil port there. Here's our correspondent, Lisa Holland.
The battle for the Strait of Hormuz appears to be underway. Iranian state television showing these pictures and claiming warning shots have been fired at American warships. America released images of its own showcasing its personnel in the Persian Gulf as it claimed to have destroyed 7 Iranian boats and shot down Iranian missiles and drones as it launched what it called Project Freedom to support, not escort, trapped commercial vessels through the vital shipping lane. It says 2 US-flagged ships have now made it through, though Iran disputes this.
They don't have a Navy anymore. Think of it. They had 159 ships. How many do they have left, Kelly? Out of 159, take a guess. She's very smart, 0.
Iran's government continues to insist it will meet the Americans head-on. Its foreign ministry spokesman, when asked why Iran doesn't roll over to its superpower adversary, replied, "We are a superpower too." And on state TV, a warning from the Iranian military.
Maritime movements that do not conform to the declared principles of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Navy will face serious risks, and violating vessels will be stopped with force.
Iran has released a map claiming new control lines of the sea between Iranian territory and the United Arab Emirates. Currently, around 1,000 vessels and 20,000 maritime crew are stuck in the Persian Gulf. With America claiming a South Korean vessel has been hit, the real test is whether it can entice trapped crews through the blockaded strait.
It is quite disturbing, and my crew morale is again, going down. So it is really very upset to know again they are attacking merchant ships. Our prime priority is to keep the vessels safe at the moment and just maintain our position and wait for right opportunity and wait for war to come an end, or wait for the Strait of Hormuz to reopen safely.
But some are optimistic.
Potentially, it could work if you're able to deny the Iranians the situational awareness and you're able to provide a level of assurance and protection to the ships that go through. Then potentially it could work. But we also have to keep in mind that the Iranians have many cards up their sleeve, and they still have the mine threat that they could potentially put into play. And so the situation is potentially very dynamic.
There's no doubt this is a war now in its 3rd month, which has entered a high-stakes and dangerous phase. Lisa Holland, Sky News.
By the way, at lunchtime today, 1 o'clock our time, we'll have a live press conference here on Sky News with the US Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth. Now, back here, later this morning, we're going to get more on the Prime Minister's response to rising anti-Semitism in the wake of the Golders Green stabbing. He's hosting a group of community leaders in Number 10 to call for a whole society-wide response.
So the guest list includes people from the world of business, civil society, health, culture, higher education, policing. And everyone's going to be asked, I think, to reflect on how they can tackle anti-Semitism in their own sector. Ali's here to tell us a bit more about what we can expect today in terms of who's attending and what the Prime Minister's likely to say.
Well, in terms of what we can expect this morning, this is basically the Prime Minister saying, look, this is a problem across a whole range of sectors. We want to find out what's going on in those sectors and how to make it better. So in terms of the attendees, there's going to be a number of Cabinet Ministers, Home Secretary, Health Secretary, Education Secretary, Prime Minister, obviously, Culture Secretary. They're going to be meeting with leaders from those sectors. So, for example, the National Theatre, the CBI, the Vice-Chancellor of various universities, Universities UK, Mark Rowley, who, of course, we've heard quite a lot from, the Commissioner of the Met Police. So this is a Prime Minister saying that this is a whole society-wide problem. He wants to tackle it. Obviously, you know, the claim from Jewish communities is this just words or is this actually action? And, you know, I was in Golders Green last week. We saw those pictures of protests outside where the Prime Minister was meeting volunteer Jewish ambulances. And we heard the anger from people who were saying, there you go, you can see those pictures, show your face to the Prime Minister. They wanted him to come out. And, yeah, as I say, you know, they were saying that they want action, not just words. In terms of action, you know, you spoke to Steve Reed earlier. He's talking about £1 million extra investment. That brings a total to £58 million to help the Jewish community. 25 million of that is for police patrols.
It's interesting you mentioned Steve Reed, and I think in some ways the most interesting bit of that interview was when we talked about the protests, because this is the difficult bit, right? You know, the extra policing and support is one thing, but what to do with protests is another. Because there will be some people who think that if another country, Israel, is committing horrors abroad, it is absolutely someone's right to protest against it. Others will say, actually, it's intimidating, their actions of anti-Semitism, they should be banned.
Yeah, I mean, it is a really difficult thing to balance, and Steve Reed was saying that it is about balance. But, I mean, I thought his answers to you were really interesting, because in terms of the government's position, you know, we've heard the Prime Minister talking about a crackdown. You asked Steve Reed, if this is happening every weekend in one particular place, these pro-Palestine protests, would that mean that they could be stopped? And his answer was really clear. He said, that's right, that's what the powers would mean. And he also talked about words. You know, the phrase that government are talking about a lot is globalise the intifada. That is something that the Prime Minister said is racist, should be prosecuted. So what does that actually mean? You know, I think we're waiting to find out. And obviously there's a review that's been commissioned into whether police should have more powers to ban protests. As you say, it's a really nuanced debate. You know, we've heard from the likes of Alf Dubs, who came here on Kinder Transport, is half Jewish. He was saying he doesn't think that banning protests outright is the right move. And, you know, I think this is all going to come to a head on the 16th of May when we do have a big pro-Palestine march planned. And the government, I think, is going to have to work out what to do by then. And I should also say, you know, there's also a Tommy Robinson, Stephen Yaxley Lennox march on that same day. So it's going to be interesting to see if we get any more clarity by then.
Ali, thank you.
Now, the World Health Organization's identified 7 confirmed or suspected cases of hantavirus following an outbreak on a luxury cruise ship in the South Atlantic.
So 3 people on board the ship, the MV Hondius, have already died. A British man's in a critical condition. And the ship's being held off the coast of Cape Verde in West Africa. Evacuation's planned for 150 people on board, but they're going to have to move in order to get off the ship.
Hantavirus is a rare but highly lethal illness spread by rats and mice, transmitted to humans via droppings. Well, our health correspondent, Ashish Joshi, has been taking a look at the disease.
A number of passengers on board a cruise ship have died and others have become extremely sick with suspected hantavirus. Here's what you need to know. The cruise ship, the MV Hondius, is carrying about 150 passengers and was travelling between Argentina and Cape Verde when passengers fell ill. The ship is currently outside the port of Praia, the capital of Cape Verde. To protect the local population, passengers are not allowed to disembark here. This passenger says he's on board the ship.
What's happening right now is very real for all of us here. We're not just a story. We're not just headlines. We're people. All we want right now is to feel safe, to have clarity, and to get home.
According to the cruise operator, Oceanwide Expeditions, the first fatality was on the 11th of April, when a Dutch passenger on board the cruise ship died. On the 24th of April, the deceased passenger and his wife were disembarked on St. Helena, an island in the South Atlantic Ocean. But 3 days later, the 27th of April, the cruise operator was told the wife had also died during her return journey. On the 27th of April, a British national became ill and was evacuated to South Africa for emergency care. Then, on the 2nd of May, a German passenger died aboard the ship. Hantavirus is a rodent-borne virus and is part of a family of zoonotic viruses. That's diseases that can be passed from animals to humans.
If you've got mice or rats on a cruise ship, and particularly if the company isn't really vigilant in rodent control and sanitizing surfaces and segregating passengers from any droppings, it can be, very dangerous.
So, how does the virus infect humans? The virus starts off contained in rodent feces, urine or saliva. Infected particles become airborne, and these can be breathed in by humans. Initial symptoms are very similar to flu-like symptoms, including muscle aches, fever, headache, and coughs. These can later develop into a serious infection of the lung or the kidneys, leading to organ failure. The incubation period, that's the time from infection to when the first symptoms appear, is somewhere between 1 to 8 weeks, but usually around 2 to 4 weeks. In extremely rare cases, the disease can be spread from human to human.
Hantavirus is not usually spread like COVID-19 or influenza, although it's a respiratory virus. For most hantaviruses, casual person-to-person spread is almost very rare.
Although there are antivirals that can help to manage symptoms, there is no cure for hantavirus. Viral outbreaks on cruises are not uncommon, but it's rare to have one that is so potentially dangerous. Officials are still working out how and where the passengers became infected and if all of them are sick with hantavirus.
Well, Ollie's here. Ollie, what is the latest on what is going on with the people on this boat? Is there any hot prospect to them getting off?
So it doesn't seem like there is at the minute. They were meant to be getting off near Cape Verde, but it looks like the authorities there do not want to risk any sort of cross-contamination or further infections happening on the island. And so what seems to be happening is that the people who are on board the boat who have got suspected cases of this, they're going to be prioritised for an evacuation. But by all the information that we've got, it doesn't look like that has happened yet. And then as for the remaining passengers, it looks like they could be then taken to the Canary Islands, where they would then be disembarked and, I imagine, put through a full health screening programme.
In terms of the kind of mood of those on board, do we know of the passengers that are at least supposedly still healthy? Do we know what they're thinking at the moment?
It's a mixed picture. So clearly we could see in the man who was speaking there in Ashish Joshi's report, there's upset, there's worry. Of course there's worry, because there's been 2 people that have died now, confirmed with the case, a 3rd person who's suspected to have had the case. There's minimum social contact between people that are on board. There's maximum social distancing. People are being advised to wear masks. The World Health Organization is trying to get testing kits on board so that they can confirm how many cases are actually out there. And some of the passengers, or at least one passenger who spoke to Sky News, who got off the boat in St Helena, says that they were worried they weren't really given a lot of information. So they contacted the cruise line, Oceanwide Expeditions, and said they basically got a response saying, monitor your symptoms if you've got any, speak to a healthcare provider and take it from there. So it's a real mixed bag between those who feel like they haven't been given enough information, those who say, actually, the cruise line's doing the best that they possibly can. And meanwhile, the family members of these 2 Dutch nationals who have died have paid tribute to their relatives who say that they've been taken far too quickly and they just want to get their bodies home so that they can mourn them and bury them in peace and privacy.
Ollie, great stuff. Thank you.
Coming up, we are going to continue our coverage of the elections that are taking place this week, and focus in particular on those elections to the Scottish Parliament. We'll be talking to all leaders there. Up first, it is the leader of Scottish Labour.
A lot of local and national seats are up for grabs.
Waiting for the people's vote on who will sit in them.
It's your chance to have a say
on who has a seat at the table.
Follow Sky News as we give you the best seats in the House.
From voting
to the results,
the analysis
and what comes next.
Join us for Vote 26.
Get the full story fast on Sky News.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Gala Hakim.
Welcome back. Well, on Thursday, voters are going to be heading to their local polling station to try and choose who they want to lead the next Scottish government. Really, really important set of votes. And throughout the lead up to the elections, we're talking to figures from all of the major political parties. We can head now to Glasgow, I'm delighted to say, and speak to Anna Sarwar, the leader of Scottish Labour. Great to have you on the programme today. What would a good night look like?
Good morning, Sophie.
Good morning. What would a good night look like for Labour in Scotland?
Look, my ambition is for us to win this election and to change the government in Scotland, because after 20 years of SNP government, we have a direct message. Give me 5. And in that 5 years, we will fix the NHS, we will make life more affordable, and we'll deliver a better future for our country. But we only do that if people vote for change, and the only choice for change on Thursday is a vote for me in Scottish Labour.
So you just said there that you want to win the election. The question was, what would be a good night? Does that mean that a good night for Labour would be becoming the largest party in Scotland? I mean, that is ambitious.
Look, absolutely, I'm ambitious for Scotland, I'm ambitious for Scottish Labour, and we were able to defy the odds 2 years ago and win. We were able to defy the odds last year and win a by-election in Scotland. And I honestly believe the overwhelming majority of people in Scotland want to see a change. And what I have to persuade people of, I've been trying to do this for the last 6 weeks, we need to do it in the next 48 hours, that if you want to change in Scotland, there's only one route to that change, and that's a vote for me in Scottish Labour. Reform can only create the noise, they can only stop change, and every vote for reform is a vote to help keep the SNP in power. The SNP can't be changed. They've been in power for 20 years. So if you want that change, you need to vote Scottish Labour.
look, it's an ambitious pitch. You know, I understand that, but you know, it's not really true, is it, to say that the only people who can stop the SNP are Labour? If you look at the polling, you know, if you look at the current council,
it's a fact, Sophie.
Well, look, if you look at Reform would probably have something to say about that, wouldn't they? They'd say that they could absolutely bring change and hold the SNP feet to the fire.
Well, let me give you an example. So what happens in the constituency seats is going to decide this election. There are 38 constituencies in which it is a straight choice between Labour and the SNP that are on a knife edge. So in those 38 constituencies that will decide this election, if you want to beat the SNP and get them out of power, the only route to doing that is by voting Scottish Labour. Reform are honestly only noise in this election. They just want to further divide Scots. They want to play their usual game. They can't actually change Scotland. And the pitch I'm standing on is not this usual divide of yes versus no, trying to split Scot from Scot, that whether that is the Reform version of it or whether it's the SNP version of it. What I'm trying to do is bring our great country, Scotland, together, because the issues I want to focus on is cutting NHS waiting lists, getting more teachers and classroom assistants into our schools, building more homes, making sure we have more police officers on our streets, and finally having a government in Scotland that doesn't think its job is just to lobby a UK government or just to fight with somebody else or point the finger of blame, but a First Minister in this country who wakes up every morning recognising the honour of the position and taking the responsibility seriously and improving people's lives here in Scotland. So the only route to doing that is a vote for me in Scottish Labour.
I don't want to get into a protracted debate about the electoral system in Scotland, but obviously there are, you know, electoral regions as well as the constituency seats up for grabs. Important to just make that clear. If you do win the election, I'm sure you would want your #1 priority to be enacted. If the SNP come out as the largest party, does that mean that Scotland deserves another referendum on independence?
I honestly believe, Sophie, that this election is not about independence and it's not for the voters either. And I honestly believe that John Swinney and the SNP know that too. This is not a plan that they are taking
even if the largest
seriously.
party is the SNP, which is a pro-independence party.
Well, let me make my point, is their argument is that this election is about whether the SNP win a majority or not. And I think they know they are deliberately misleading the public, because this election is not about whether the SNP win a majority or not, it's about whether they stay in power or not. And the reason why they're talking about independence is not because they believe they can deliver it, they're doing it because they don't want to talk about the record on the NHS, they don't want to talk about the record on schools, they don't want to talk about the record on the justice system. It's a distraction. And frankly, I think Scots will see right through it on May the 7th.
In February, you called on Keir Starmer to resign. You said the leadership in Downing Street has to change. Have you changed your mind?
Look, I said what I said in February. I stand by it. I don't recoil from it for a moment. But as you can imagine, the next 48 hours, my focus is on changing the First Minister of this country and the occupant of Bute House, because that's what's going to make a meaningful difference to people's lives in this election campaign. So, again, I'm saying directly to voters in Scotland, I get many of you are disappointed and angry. I share that anger and disappointment. Yes, that might be some of it pointed towards the UK, but there's a lot of that disappointment and anger directed to a failing SNP government too.
Look,
So
I understand that.
This election is not an endorsement. Is not an endorsement of Keir Starmer. Sorry, Sophie.
Sorry, continue. You say it's not an endorsement of Keir Starmer.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to make, is every vote for me in Scottish Labour in this election is not an endorsement of Keir Starmer. It won't be used as an endorsement of Keir Starmer. It is choosing who the First Minister is. Because this election is not about passing judgment on 2 years of a Labour government, it's about passing judgment on 20 years of an SNP government. And I can get why commentators in Westminster and even politicians in Westminster might want to think about what this election means for Westminster, but this is not a free hit for us in Scotland. It's not an election without consequence. It's not a protest. It's about our schools, our hospitals, our towns, cities, villages and islands, and they need a new government in Scotland.
I understand. I absolutely understand the importance of the Scottish Parliament elections. You're right to make that point. But if I may, just on Keir Starmer, because you say you don't recoil from what you said back in February. So you still think that he needs to go? Do you think he needs to go, this year? Is that what you're still making that call for him to go?
Well, as I said, I stand by what I said. I don't recoil from it. And as people know, as I said at the time, and I've said many times since, the tipping point for me was the Mandelson scandal. It's just something that I simply wasn't willing to defend. He never should have been considered as the ambassador. He never should have been appointed the ambassador. And I ultimately believe he is a traitor to the country. But as you can imagine, 40 hours from an election where we are choosing the government in Scotland and choosing the First Minister, that is my relentless focus.
Yeah, I understand that. What's your message to other people in Westminster, I guess, who are potential leadership rivals or challengers, who may also be unhappy with Keir Starmer's leadership, but haven't gone over the top, if you like? They're maybe reluctant to make the first move. What's your message to them? Do you think that they need to, I guess, grow a backbone?
Sophie, you might be surprised when I say this. I don't care what they think, and I don't care what they do. I only care about what happens in Scotland. Genuinely, this election is so big and so important for us and the future of the next generation in Scotland that that's my relentless focus. I don't wake up every morning thinking about what the highs and the lows are for Westminster politicians or what their view is.
Yeah, but you think about who's going to be the Prime Minister, don't you? Or the, come on. You do think about that.
No, I'm only thinking about who the next First Minister is going to be. Okay. I've got an election in 48 hours, the biggest election I've fought in my life. That's all I'm thinking about.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Always good to speak to you. Anna Sawa.
My pleasure. Thanks, Sophie. Thank you.
Up next, we'll speak to the actor Mark Gatiss about his latest play and its relevance to today's politics. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Well, the double Olivier Award-winning actor Mark Gatiss has taken on lots of roles in his very varied career, from King George III to Peter Mandelson. But his later role is a Chicago mobster in the Royal Shakespeare Company play The Resistible Rise of Arturo Ui, which is a political satire with themes, some say, echo around today's world.
I'd like to say that he joins us now. A very good morning to you, Mark. Thanks for joining us.
Well, like very close up this early in the morning. Hello, how are you?
You must be a man often with close-ups, given your profession. So so I'm sure you're taking in your stride. Tell us about the play and why we were able to allude to it to having comparisons to today's political environment.
Well, it was. It's a political satire. It's basically a parable play about the rise of Hitler, as if he were a Chicago mobster, and so it's a sort of allegory of him and his gang of misfits, essentially trying to take over Chicago. It was written in 1941 and never produced in Bertolt Brecht's lifetime, but since then it's become a kind of very famous warning from history. But now, really, it's more of a sort of, it was ripped from the headlines, really, I might say. That's what we're discovering as we're doing it.
It's so interesting to hear that it was written, that's when it was written, at that incredible moment in history, that awful moment in history, 1941. Do you think that there are, I guess, parallels that you've explored through the play with what we're seeing today?
Yes, there are acute parallels. There's no need for any of us to pussyfoot around it. Yeah. These are the times we are living in. It is direct and terrifying. There are points during the rehearsal of the play where we all sort of stared at the wall because the stuff we were doing was no longer a warning from the past. It was just what was happening in terms of gaslighting and in terms of blaming others and blaming people from different places for our own economic and political woes, And the problem is, this is how fascism gets its grip. It exploits resentment and hatred, and it's a very old playbook. It's the same playbook that Hitler and all the others used. And it still works, I'm afraid to say.
I've seen some of the comments you've made, Mark, in and around the play, and you've said that there's been a death of political satire. Do you think, though, it is coming back? I mean, of course, on Sky, there's now Saturday Night Live again, is a sort of small but different example. Do you think it's bouncing back?
It's doing great. I mean, the show is doing fantastically well. I think that the trouble is, it's a strange thing to say because the times are so dangerous and frightening. There's a very famous story about when Peter Cook, in the height of his fame in the 60s, was interviewed by a very gushing American journalist who said, this is like the Weimar Republic. It's incredible what you're doing. You're holding power to account. And Peter Cook said yes, which did so much to prevent the rise of the Nazis. And the trouble is, satire can feel very much like you're sort of addressing the converted. You're sort of laughing up your own sleeve, and it's very difficult to satirize anything when the times themselves are so extraordinary. Donald Trump is a sort of figure beyond satire because he just does it every day. Things that would have brought someone else down. He does 6 impossible things before breakfast, and we all get very used to it, and that does have a sort of numbing effect, I think. But this play is very clever in a way because it is talking about real events, and what happens after each scene is we are told explicitly what they refer to, and this is how they did it. This is how they found their way in. So as a technique, it's very striking because it sort of makes you laugh and it entertains you, and then it sort of slaps you in the face at the same time.
I'm interested what you said there about, in a way, what is the impact of satire? Because you're kind of talking to people who think the same anyway. I mean, is that part of the issue, do you think? That we are in these kind of bubbles, I guess, where we're not empathising with other people?
I think we all are. And that's, I wish if I could bring back anything to television, it would be the idea of a discussion programme where people sat down in front of each other and talked about things and didn't hide behind a keyboard and rant. Because as soon as you look someone in the eye and you see them as a human being, you start to think about things differently. You have to. It's a human reaction, unless you have no empathy, as some people don't. But I think that would be a really good idea, because then it's a debate. It's not just black and white. And the biggest problem we live in, I think, is that we live in unnuanced times. And everything is so starkly polarized. That's why, America looks like it's split in half. Britain looks like it's split in half. It's the 52-48 divide. It's Cavaliers and Roundheads, if you want. It sort of goes a long way back, and I think what we need to do is sit down and talk to each other and find a way through.
Britain maybe is divided into 5 or 6 at the moment as we approach the local elections. We'll see what happens. Well, just finally, with you saying that more broadly, not just on the sort of political polarisation point, but talking about looking into people's eyes. Do you think that theatre does that more powerfully than any other entertainment medium?
I mean, it has to. The thing is, you're talking to 450 people a night and not to 45 million. But it's an amazingly exciting and galvanizing thing to do the show in front of real people. I mean, one thing I do think, this is a strange thing to say, but I think one of the beneficiaries of AI is going to be theatre, because the more people become used to not really trusting what's in front of their eyes, I think the more they're going to want to sit down in front of a palpably real person and be entertained in whatever aspect. I think that's quite good news for theatre, dare I say. It may not be good news for anything else, but it's good news for theatre.
Mark, thanks so much for joining us. Good to see you.
My pleasure, thank you.
Very interesting debate there with Mark Gatiss. Now, we're going to be hearing from the Prime Minister in probably the next few minutes, actually. It's ahead of a summit on how to respond to anti-Semitism. While we wait, it's in number 10 Downing Street. He's bringing different leaders there from different communities across the UK. We can bring in our correspondent Ali Fortescue to talk a bit more about this. So this is all, I guess, part of the government's attempts to try and tackle rising anti-Semitism.
Yeah, and this is the Prime Minister basically saying that there is anti-Semitism in all different sectors of society, and he's bringing in leaders from a whole range of sectors, you know, the National Theatre, the Commissioner of the Met Police, the head of the CBI. So it's really is quite a wide variety of sectors, and they are going to be speaking to cabinet ministers that represent those sectors. We're expecting to hear from the Prime Minister really shortly. I think he's probably in there speaking right now. We expect he's going to talk about the need to eradicate anti-Semitism in every corner of society and talk about a pattern of anti-Semitism. Obviously, this follows that attack in Golders Green, 2 men stabbed, taken to hospital last week, and a number of other attacks as well. And we are also, I should say, the opening remarks are going to be by Steve Reed, who you spoke to earlier, and there were opening remarks too by Louis Danker, who is the president of the Union of Jewish Students. But you had a really interesting conversation with Steve Reed, I thought, about a whole range of things, including protests, and I think that is something that is going to be a sharp focus.
Yeah, let's have a quick listen to...
Now, the Crime and Policing Bill that's just gone through Parliament gives the Home Secretary new powers to take into account the cumulative effect of a series of marches on intimidation towards a particular community, and she can use those powers...
So just to be clear on that, does that basically mean if there's been a march every single weekend in a particular area, you could say, actually, that's enough, we're just going to stop
That's
that
right.
happening?
That's what the powers would mean. And also some of the language that's used on those marches, globalise the Intifada being, you know, the example that gets talked about the most. Now,
Do you think that just to stay on the banning of marches, so because I guess some people would say they have a right to march as many times as they want to if they're doing it in a peaceful manner. But
people have a right to march, but members of the Jewish community have the right to live their lives and go about their business in freedom and to express their religion. Now, Jewish people today are afraid to wear the skull caps, afraid to show the Star of David. In this country, in 2026, that is completely unacceptable.
It's so interesting that, because I guess it implies that this can just be done like that. It doesn't require further legislation, and it's almost a change of guidance than anything else.
Well, we have seen the Home Secretary already ban an Al-Quds march that was meant to happen in March. So there is a precedent for that happening. We know there's a review that's happening by Lord MacDonald looking at how police could ban marches. But, you know, I mean, that was a fascinating answer, I thought, from Steve Reed. It was a pretty direct question about whether, if marches are happening in the same place every weekend. Should they be banned? And he basically just said, yes, that's right. So it's obviously a very nuanced debate. We know that Kemi Badenoch and the Chief Rabbi both want a moratorium on these marches, but then there are plenty on the other side who say, look, this is about freedom of speech. How are people going to legitimately be able to come out and make their views known on what's going on in Gaza? So, you know, it's a tricky debate, and Steve Reed said that there needs to be balance too.
Yeah, we've got all eyes, of course, on number 10 to see the very latest there, of course. So we're expected to hear from Keir Starmer. It's interesting to see the focus on university leaders in there as well. And you were saying that it's the Jewish students lead who was opening up the debate.
Yeah, that's right. So Lewis Danker, the president of the Union of Jewish Students, is opening this up. And yeah, so the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, is in there. She is going to be hearing from Universities UK and a number of vice-chancellors. And I think, you know, we've seen in the last few days just how broad this is becoming. I mean, we also have heard from the Commissioner of the Met Police, Mark Rowley. He has been very vocal. He has talked about algorithms online and how that is feeding anti-Semitism. So I think, you know, the Prime Minister is saying that this is about hearing from all sectors what's going on in these individual sectors. But what people want, and, you know, I was in Golders Green following that Prime Minister's visit there last week, is action, not words. The government will say they put a lot of money into this, £58 million overall, 25 million going to police patrols to protect the Jewish community. But there is, you know, there is real anger. People really don't feel safe. I was talking to a father who was protesting outside where the Prime Minister was. He was talking about security at where his child is at nursery. I mean, security at nursery for Jewish children. These stories, you know, some of these stories are extraordinary, and the Prime Minister clearly wants to be seen to be doing something. Their question is it words or is it action?
Do we think this is a extended set of remarks by the PM? Is this going to be kind of brief? Is he going to be out and about later today?
The honest answer to that is I'm not 100% sure, but I'm sure we're going to hear very soon. I think the whole point of this is about these kind of round tables. So it's about the cabinet ministers meeting the leaders from those various sectors. So I don't expect it to be a kind of protracted, long statement. We did hear quite a lot from the Prime Minister last week. But I think he is going to say that this is about eradicating anti-Semitism in every corner of society and talk about the pattern of anti-Semitism after those anti-Semitic attacks.
Thanks very much, Ali. We'll, of course, bring you the very latest from Downing Street as soon as we get it. If we hear anything from the Prime Minister, we'll bring that to you straight away. But as we've been discussing earlier this hour, the annual Truth Tellers Summit takes place tomorrow in London. So the idea is to bring together media and cultural leaders in celebration of global journalism. We spoke to its co-founder, Tina Brown, and asked her about truth and Donald Trump.
There is a war on information because it is the combination, obviously, of the disinformation, the digital chaos. But we also have a president in Trump, you know, who spends his time spewing out complete, you know, unsupported facts. And that has actually eroded so much trust in the US that, you know, people don't really know what to believe anymore.
Tina was also one of the first journalists to publish about Jeffrey Epstein back in 2008 and gave us an astonishing account of her experience with the dead paedophile.
Without journalism, we wouldn't know anything about Epstein. And he came, when I was at the Daily Beast and we published those first stories, he came into my office to threaten me.
Did he really?
Yeah, he did. It was very sinister. I was in the art department, came back to my office, and there was Jeffrey Epstein sitting in my office. I'll never know how he got past the reception. And he said to me, "You just stop. You stop." And I told him to leave, and we published the stories, which were about how he got this deal, you know, with to simply... he was charged with harassing one girl as opposed to the massive amount of malfeasance he was doing. I do think that the UK has been far more effective at actually, you know, getting some accountability. We've had really no accountability in the US. I mean, only Ghislaine Maxwell, you know, his accomplice, is, you know, is sitting in prison. But there have been no other arrests. There have been shamings. There have been, you know, rich, powerful people who've been getting bad press for it. But we haven't ever yet discovered who else was, you know, sleeping, harassing, you know, and raping underage girls. We haven't found that out yet. Whereas at least in the UK, you know, there have been, you know, real fallout from the Epstein case.
She makes such a good point there about, you know, that we talked so much about Epstein and yet there haven't been these, you know, arrest, people in jail. The only person in jail is a woman, right? You know, kind of classic, really.
Absolutely, and I think it's one of those great examples where journalism led, and very, very slowly. There's been a little bit of, you know, the official authorities following, but still kind of scant in relation to the scale of what we're talking about. And I thought it was just a really great chat. She's so kind of impressive in this area. And by the way, tomorrow from her summit, the Truth Tellers Summit, will be joined by Kara Swisher as well. Looking forward to that conversation. She'll be with us tomorrow at 8:30.
Yeah, definitely worth sticking around for that. Coming up, we'll, of course, bring you the very latest of the summit currently going on in Downing Street about how to tackle anti-Semitism in the UK. We're also going to be talking about middle-class shoplifting. People, you know, putting a few onions through the self-service checkout. You're guilty of it yourself? We're going to chat that coming up.
With respect, Minister, answer the question.
It's you.
Hello and welcome, I'm Cathy Newman. So could the outcome of these elections be manipulated? New me, new show, new furniture.
Hard news needs a hard chair.
I feel like I'm in therapy. Oh, there's room for two on this one. Do you think people will take me seriously with my feet up?
Sorry, madam, but we're closing now.
Oh, sorry. Sofa sorted, let's get this show on the road.
A lot of local and national seats are up for grabs.
Waiting for the people's vote
on who will sit in them.
It's your chance to have a say
on who has a seat at the table.
Follow Sky News as we give you the best seats in the House.
From voting
to the results,
the analysis,
and what comes next.
Join us for Vote 26.
Get the full story fast on Sky News.
Sky News has been given exclusive data showing every Palestinian who has been killed in Gaza since the war began. Our analysis of this pattern in the killings suggests that entire families were wiped out in their homes or shelters. The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparent journalism from Sky News. We located footage of the aid drop to a tent camp in central Gaza.
These airdrops are falling in extremely populated areas.
We combine traditional reporting with advanced analysis of satellite imagery, social media, and other open source information. And this is just one of the strikes and incidents we've been able to geolocate across Gaza. Sky News has found Nazi speeches and marching music have been used as background sound on tens of thousands of TikTok videos as far-right groups try and spread their message. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. There's no evidence yet of foul play at Heathrow. It shows weaknesses that enemies could take advantage of. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. Supporters say it saves lives and projects American power and influence.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in.
A lot of people are going to be, why are you making Nazi references? Right. Well, why wouldn't I?
Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
It's a racial association. I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News. People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood has rallied around her. It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Welcome back. Self-checkout machines. Well, some people love them, other people hate them. But one thing's for sure, they've led to a massive rise in the amount of shoplifting across the UK.
Just look at these stats. As you can see, the number of shoplifting offences has absolutely shot up since 2020. There's well over 500,000 offences now taking place every year.
It doesn't seem to be just those struggling to make ends meet who are stealing. There's been a rise in middle-class shoppers taking advantage of the new technology. Let's speak to Professor of Criminology, Emmeline Taylor. Thanks so much for joining us on this. Are we putting that increase down to self-checkouts, or is it other factors as well, like the cost of living?
Good morning. Yes, there's a whole range of factors that underscore the shoplifting epidemic that the UK has found itself in the midst of post-pandemic. So as your chart quite rightly shows, this huge increase in levels of theft. But we've got organised criminal gangs that are targeting the UK sector. We've got drug-affected individuals that drive a large part of this prolific offending. But also, as we're hearing from some businesses, they're pointing the finger at the middle classes, individuals that can well afford to pay for their goods, but they're choosing not to because they see this behaviour as having been normalised, they see it as trivial. And what's really interesting, what we've seen in recent days, reported in the New York Times in the US, is that some offenders are claiming that this is politically motivated. It's ideological. And so some affluent individuals say that they're stealing from large corporations because they think that the business practices of that corporation are somehow immoral. So they're able to use their own moral gymnastics to try and rebadge this criminal activity as some form of political resistance. It's really quite astonishing. It's being called micro-looting. Now, I would call a spade a spade. This is theft. And these offenders, I think, are far too clever to be able to try and rebadge it in this way.
Isn't it all a little bit more simple than that? Supermarkets have made it much easier for people to shoplift because of self-checkouts. And if people think they can get away with it, then they will.
Self-service checkouts really dominate the point of sale in most supermarkets in particular, but also seeing them being brought into fashion. Now, 10 years ago, I published a piece of research that illuminated what I called the swipers. Now, the swipers is an acronym and it stands for seemingly well-intentioned patrons engaging in regular shoplifting. It's a bit of a mouthful, but what the swipers encapsulates is that absolutely, as you say, some customers find it very easy to take a few items when they're using the self-service checkout and don't necessarily see it as theft. They see it as a bit of a trick. It's a game. They're cheating the system. So faced with the machine, they don't think of it as theft in the same way as if they were actually facing a human being. And again, some offenders go so far as to say that this is ideologically motivated because they used to pay a member of staff to serve them, and now it's a machine.
Just to follow up on Sophie's question, but with a slightly different question. I mean, maybe we don't have any data on this, but I'm sure you would as a professor of criminology if it exists. To what extent has it been made easier by a lack of punishment when it happens, a lack of policing, lack of follow-up to these occasions, as opposed to necessarily it being down to the technology or the shop's fault, as it were?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, and there has been a relative lack of consequence. I published a report a couple of years ago called Stealing with Impunity that really highlighted the lack of police response. But let's put that in the context of just how high this level of criminality reached. There's a large number of social factors that have driven that. You've mentioned the cost of living crisis as just one of them. It's challenging for the police to be able to respond to every single crime type. So we do need retailers to step up with better security. We're seeing much more technology now, particularly at the self-service checkout. So artificial intelligence, behavioural analytics, it's much harder to now steal and justify it at the self-service checkout. But the police also are really beginning to take strides to begin to turn the tide on this surge of criminality. Last week, we also saw the Crime and Policing Bill was reached royal accession. Now, what that means is that we no longer have this arbitrary £200 threshold, that if you steal below that amount, it was seen as a low-level trivial crime. Dubbed the shoplifting charter, that's now been abolished. So we might begin to see far more consequences for these types of offences.
OK, thank you very much, Indy. Good to have you on the programme.
Thank you.
We've been keeping an eye, of course, on Downing Street, where Keir Starmer is currently hosting a group of people, leaders from universities, police, culture, etc., to try and tackle anti-Semitism. And we've just started to get a couple of comments come through from him. Keir Starmer has said that attempts by Iran to destabilise British society, in his words, will not be tolerated. This is a suspicion that Iran, or forces acting on behalf of Iran, have been stirring up anti-Semitism.
We're monitoring those comments for you, and we will bring them to you in full when we do have them. So do stay tuned to Sky News for that, coming up on Sky News today shortly. About a minute left. Have you seen the story? President Obama has given an interview to The New Yorker, and he said that Donald Trump and the way in which President Obama is having to continue to make comments about current-day politics is having a negative impact on his marriage. The headline is a bit more dramatic than the reality, which he just says his wife would rather he step back altogether from politics for their retirement years. The fact he's feeling a need to still speak out on issues is causing a bit of tension.
Yeah, it
does.
As
opposed to something more specific.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It does create genuine tension in our household, and it frustrates her. I'm more forgiving of it. I understand why people feel that way. So I don't think it's like divorce situation.
He also says, which I think is interesting, no other ex-president was the main surrogate for the party for 4 election cycles after they left office. So he's sort of, I guess, lamenting that there hasn't been anyone to take the spotlight off him a little bit.
To step up, I guess.
On that note, we're out of time. Sky News Today, up next.